Chapter 799. The Rakshasa ghost sect group was instantly scared out of their wits. And the woman's intestines almost turned green with regret. She didn't expect that a little girl who didn't seem to have any lethality would be able to control a spirit weapon so skillfully in minutes. Even with her abilities, she might not be able to make the defensive thunder barrier exhibit such great effects. From this, it could be seen how frightening this little girl was. Lightning filled the entire small spiritual domain and weaved into the shape of a Chinese character, pressing down on everyone's heads step by step. The woman was the first to see a member's arm being swallowed by lightning. Then, she widened her eyes in horror as she watched the web-like lightning cut through her head. Arbor put away the defensive thunder barrier and turned the ring on her finger. Not bad. This spirit weapon is rather interesting. Hui Feng and the others silently glanced at their crown princess, then simultaneously looked back at the severed limbs strewn all over the ground and shuddered. Didn't they already know the extent of the crown prince consort's cruelty? What kind of place is the Rakshasa ghost sect? Arbor rubbed the ring on her finger. This ring had the same effect as the defensive ring on her finger. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The Rakshasa ghost sect is a relatively secretive sect on Seekong planet. Prince Mo grasped Arbor's hand and turned to walk toward the city gate. They do all kinds of business, from selling illicit salt, escorting bodyguards, murdering people for their goods, assassinating officials. As long as it's a job that can earn them money, they'll take it all, Prince Mo explained aloofly. They were once wiped out by a righteous sect 10 years ago. They vanished without a trace these past few years and haven't appeared much. Arbor looked up and glanced at the crown prince. Who is the Rakshasa princess? Hui Feng and the others had actually heard of the Rakshasa princess before, and the Hidden Night Pavilion had even done quite a bit of research on her. The Rakshasa princess is their sect master. According to rumors, the Rakshasa princess is a dainty lady with unparalleled beauty, Hui Feng interrupted. Her hobby is to collect all kinds of handsome men. That Rakshasa princess also uses people as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy? The little girl asked with a curious blink. Our dear Hui Feng suddenly couldn't fucking continue. Crown princess, can't you see that the crown prince is glaring at me? How could this subordinate continue to speak? This subordinate does not dare to say such words that are not suitable for children. Is Princess Raksha the sister of Granny Witch from Coitus faction? Granny Witch also likes different men, sucking their vitality. Arbor had an attitude of wanting to get to the bottom of things. Mo Lien was speechless. They're not sisters. They just have the same interest in handsome men. But what's so good about men? Why do they like different kinds of beautiful men so much? Arbor murmured. Could it be some kind of disease? His Highness the Crown Prince and his male subordinates looked at each other and their mouths twitched. Although the Crown Princess was ferocious, she was strangely adorable. Ahem, Crown Princess, didn't you say earlier that you had something to discuss with the Crown Prince? Lightning hastily changed this strange topic and reminded Arbor. Oh, that's right. Arbor nodded. Emolian, let's find a place to sit down, and I'll tell you in detail. Okay. Mo Lien breathed a sigh of relief and pursed her thin lips into a smile. Chapter 800. If the little girl asked him again, what exactly does the Rakshasa princess like about beautiful men? Mo Lien didn't mind personally carrying the little fellow and demonstrating that the two casually entered an abandoned house, found a relatively clean room, and sat down at the table. Arbor used his mystic sense to open his inner world and took out 2 steaming bowls of soup from the all-purpose food box. He handed one bowl to Mo Lien and held the other bowl for himself. Mo Lien had been busy the whole day and definitely didn't eat properly. This bowl of soup was for him to fill his stomach first. Hurry and drink. Black-boned chicken soup is very nourishing. We'll talk after you finish. The little fellow handed him a spoon and held the soup in his hands, drinking it in small sips. Crown Prince Mo was extremely moved. As long as his little emperor darling treated him slightly better, Crown Prince Mo felt that he would definitely be moved by the heavens and the earth. Thus, he shattered a bit more of this stoic baby's layers of ice. The Crown Prince's goal was to defrost his baby as much as possible and warm her heart. And it would be best if she smiled at him often. That would be perfect. Arbor looked at him in bewilderment, his bright black eyes staring at him. Why aren't you drinking? It's delicious. Prince Mo hastily drank a mouthful, but he almost scalded himself. Are you an idiot? Arbor rolled his eyes and reached out to take out a handkerchief to wipe the corner of his mouth. This soup is still warm, it's very hot. Jojo, you even carry hot soup with you. If this treatment was placed in peacetime, it would be especially blissful to be able to drink a mouthful of hot soup at any time when one went out for training. Hurry and finish it. Arbor watched him finish the soup and then took out 3 dishes and 2 bowls of rice from the food box. He handed 1 bowl to him. We'll talk while we eat. Prince Mo was instantly dumbfounded. Jojo, you really cooked rice and brought it out? No. I have a lunchbox with a lot of food in it, but I didn't cook it. Arbor stuffed a mouthful of rice into his mouth and said casually, let's talk business. According to my observation, every time there is a large-scale outbreak of zombies, there was a bird about the size of Qingwan that would fly across the sky. Perhaps there was more than one. Maybe there are a few of them, but they are flying high, so we might not be able to notice them. Doesn't it look a bit like a nighthawk? That kind of bird? You noticed it too. Arbor chewed a mouthful of rice and nodded vigorously. That's right. I call them nightcaw birds. Prince Mo's expression turned slightly solemn. He put down the spoon in his hand and said, this kind of nightcaw bird's flying speed isn't any slower than the blue phoenix's. Jojo, come on. Crown Prince Mo pulled Xiaomu up and walked to the room next door. Suddenly, with a flick of his finger, he abruptly released a giant bird carcass from his inner world, which practically filled more than half of the room. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, it's this kind of bird. Heavens, so Mo Lien was actually that sharp. She had already shot and killed a nightcaw bird at some point in time and hid it in her inner world to study it for a while. Back in Quoto Village, on the night of the zombie outbreak, she had vaguely seen this kind of nightcaw bird. At that time, a thought flashed through her mind, but she couldn't grasp the fragments of memory. It wasn't until last night when she saw the bird's afterimage flying past from the window that she suddenly woke up. Chapter 801. She had seen this bird in her past life as well. Mo Lien, do you know what I'm thinking? Arbor held Mo Lien's arm tightly, her expression changing slightly. I know, Jojo. You must be thinking. This disaster is not a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Mo Lien picked up Arbor and put the nightcaw bird's body back into his inner world. He turned to the original room and put her in front of the dining table. Arbor looked at him with sparkling eyes. She loved talking to Mo Lien the most. Every time she said the first half of a sentence, Mo Lien would know what she was going to say next. It was effortless. Moreover, Mo Lien was too smart, and his observation skills were very strong. She only noticed the nightcaw bird's existence because of the experience she had accumulated in her past life. Mo Lien, on the other hand, only noticed it because of his meticulous observation. This man was so smart that people did not know what to say. If I'm not wrong, these nightcaw birds only spread the mutated poison at specific times. Arbor quickly said, maybe these nightcaw birds are not omnipotent. You see, they have only appeared twice in the past 7 years. Mo Lien also continued, there's also another possibility, which is that a certain organization behind this has been researching the evolution of toxins for as long as 7 to 8 years. Before the poison evolves, they will not send out the nightcaw birds to spread the poison powder again. Arbor's eyes narrowed, and she reached out her finger to point in circles on the table. When the mutated poison is spread, the poison powder will mix with the rainwater and flow into the ground when there is a storm. Therefore, the corpses that have just been buried will have a reaction. The mutated poison will make the corpses not stiff, and will even start to have the ability to move slowly. But at the same time, when it is absorbed by a living person, it can also cause some people to mutate. But this mutation is developing in a good way. Some of the people who absorb the mutated poison will mutate into people with special abilities. Mo Lien lowered his head slightly in thought, and raised his hand to look at it. Even I was not spared. My body has produced a special medicinal effect. Mo Lien's eyes gradually merged with Arbor's. The two of them spoke at the same time and quickly said, "Usually, those who can mutate and become people with special abilities should be ordinary people. Mystic cultivators and body cultivators who have special abilities at the same time are only isolated cases. So, this poison is actually a poison that targets ordinary people." What was this? Survival of the fittest? The mutated poison could mutate some people into people with special abilities, while ordinary people without special abilities would die in large numbers at the hands of the zombies. In the end, the remaining ones should be mutants with special abilities. There would no longer be ordinary people in this world. Other than superhumans, there would only be mystic cultivators, body cultivators, and demonic cultivators. Are they crazy? Arbor was furious. He slammed the table and the bowl of rice bounced. What does the existence of ordinary people do to them? Why can't you give others a chance to survive? Jojo! Mo Lien hugged her tightly in her arms. The little girl angrily roared in agitation. Do ordinary people deserve to die? Without mystic energy, no special abilities, no mystic beasts, no mystic weapons, nothing. Do poor people like them not have the right to continue living? Chapter 802. In her previous life, before the age of 16, she was this kind of ordinary person. A person who couldn't be any more ordinary. Her father, Qiao Zhongbang, was also a cripple whose mystic meridians were crippled in her previous life. When she was 9 years old, her family sought refuge in the Mo Kingdom capital's Qiao family. How much contempt did they suffer? How difficult was it to survive? These matters were vivid in her mind, and she didn't dare to forget a single bit. Why did they have to do this? Why couldn't they give ordinary people a chance to live? This damned organization manipulated all ordinary people in the palm of their hand. What exactly did they want to do? Did they want to completely change the world? Their poison has evolved. Arbor clutched Mo Lien's sleeve tightly as he said each word. That's right. The poison powder already doesn't only mutate corpses. It can enter the blood through ordinary wounds and cause living people to turn into zombies. Arbor said with an icy gaze. That was why she said those words to Lightning. Those people who mutated yesterday definitely didn't mutate because they were injured. The main reason was that the nocturnal coot bird's poison powder had entered their wounds and blood, causing their bodies to mutate again. This dark organization behind the scenes was truly terrifying. They could actually develop such a terrifying poison for the human body? What was their goal? Did they want the world to be destroyed? What benefits would they gain from the destruction of humanity? First stage, mutating corpses. Second stage, mutating living bodies. No, they're about to enter the third stage. Water source mutation. These people acted faster than in her previous life. Arbor turned to Mo Lien with a solemn expression and said, "Every fortification must open up a new water reservoir and bring in underground water. Every water storage point needs to be guarded day and night." Jojo, do you think they'll extend their evil claws to water sources in the following third stage? What's faster and fiercer than polluting water sources? In her previous life, the nocturnal coot birds had spread poison powder to rivers and lakes. According to her experience, one would turn into a zombie after drinking water. This kind of thing was about to happen before her eyes. She didn't know if Mo Lien had been in northern Mo in her previous life. In any case, the construction of the fortifications in her previous life simply wasn't that fast. Basically, after the zombie disaster, the symbol of national power completely fell from power, and there was no distinction between countries anymore. At that time, the entire Seekong planet was in chaos, abnormally tragic, and chaos was everywhere. It wasn't until 2 years later that the construction of the defensive fortifications was started by people who crawled and rolled on the ground. In the later stages of the zombie apocalypse, when she was about 18 or 19 years old, finding a water source had become a fatal and terrifying problem. It was already very hard to find a clean water source on the entire Seekong planet. Therefore, People were frantically searching for the secret realm. Yes, the mystic realm. There might be a clean water source in the immortals' grotto heaven or the land of heritage set up by the expert. What people yearned for the most were naturally formed secret realms. This kind of secret realm was like a paradise. It had its own natural law, and everything in the world was created to form a complete ecological world. However, this kind of secret realm required thousands or tens of thousands of years to form. Once it was found, it would naturally be a fierce struggle for it. At that time, some of her teammates in the team of 20 had died of thirst. Chapter 803. If only she had a bowl of clear water back then, how great would that have been? She wouldn't have become all alone. Surviving in a hopeless situation was really tough. Watching her teammates die one by her side, her mentality would gradually become distorted. She still remembered. It should have been a flourishing May, but because of the destruction of large areas of vegetation, the withered leaves were as cold as the 12th lunar month. She could clearly see that among the withered yellow leaves, an 18-year-old black-clothed youth with a long sword on his back was walking towards her. His face was handsome, but his eyes were like a desert, expressionless when he looked at people or things. Who's that person? Arbor used a dirty handkerchief to wipe off the bloodstains from the hunt just now. Oh, a newcomer called Little Six. The young girl fiddled with a palm-sized sweet potato from the fire. She reached out to take it, but it was so hot that she couldn't stop pinching her fingers and covering her ears. I'll share half with you, little Chiao. No need you eat it. Arbor stuffed the dirty handkerchief into her waist, her gaze following the black-clothed youth. This person doesn't have a surname? The young girl peeled the sweet potato and giggled. He's like a sawed-off gourd. No matter how others ask, he won't say what his surname is. He just said he's called Little Six. But his skills are not bad. Jojo, what's wrong? Mo Lien immediately noticed that the young girl's mood was not right. He hurriedly reached out to hug her and lightly patted her on the back. Arbor retracted her wandering thoughts and looked at him intently. She said softly, Mo Lien, in my heart, there's always been a dream. I'll tell you later. Arbor pursed her lips and patted his chest. Finish the food, don't waste it. Okay. Mo Lien didn't ask any more questions. She reached out and gently pinched her little chin. She said casually, Jojo, no matter what happens, you just have to remember that I won't leave you. Xiao Mu's beady black eyes rolled, and an idea flashed through her eyes. She picked up the rice bowl with her small hands and vigorously nodded her small head. Jojo, you said that I'm not an ordinary person. Why would my ability mutate? Mo Lien asked Arbor with a puzzled expression as she ate 2 mouthfuls of rice. Arbor looked at him speechlessly. You might be a weirdo. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes abruptly turned round. His baby was joking with him. This joke was really not funny at all. The two of them quickly finished their meal. Arbor threw the bowls and chopsticks into his inner world and pulled him out. Your Highness. Huifeng, do you want some buns? Arbor tossed him a small bag of meat buns. Huifeng's eyes suddenly brightened, and he naturally nodded repeatedly. His crown princess, she was simply a living bodhisattva who saved people from suffering. They had been tossing and turning for an entire day and night, yet they hadn't had the time to eat a single bite. These buns were still piping hot, so there simply couldn't be any more loving. Mo Lien pursed her lips. Look at this bunch of brats. They had only starved for a night, yet they acted as if she had mistreated them. Mo Lien, there's an endless stream of those zombies outside no matter how we fight. Mo Lien held her small hand and led her outside. Someone must have deliberately lured them to Bailon City. It's possible that it's that underground village. The two spoke in unison, and they couldn't help but smile as they looked at each other. Chapter 804. That underground village is very strange. It's so close to the Mo Kingdom capital, so there must be something strange about it. Mo Lien said softly, from the looks of it now, it might be an underground place where zombies are secretly raised. Could that underground village be related to the organization behind it? Mo Lien shook her head. We don't know about that yet. But this organization spent 7 to 8 years just to develop the evolution poison powder, which means that it should have existed for a very long time. Are they perverts? Why must they play a bloody game of survival of the fittest for normal people? Mo Lien patted her little head. Good girl, don't think so much. You've already thought enough today. I'll send you back to rest, okay? No, I've already thought of a way to deal with those zombies outside the city. Arbor hugged Mo Lien with 2 small hands and tilted her head. But I need your cooperation. Mo Lien looked at her in amusement. Hey, tell me. I'll cooperate however you need me to. As he spoke, he lowered his head to search for her little mouth for a kiss. Arbor's little face swiftly flushed, and she snuck a glance at Hui Feng and the others, only to see them fighting over the buns far away. Not this cooperation. Xiao Mu angrily blocked the man's thin lips with her hand. Mo Lien pulled down her little hand and directly kissed it twice. Her heart inexplicably softened when his thin lips grazed her little hand. Oh, then this is it? This? Or this? He kissed, touched, and licked. Xiao Mu forcefully pulled back her small hand and angrily cast this scoundrel a glance. You're neither. It's that you need to show off your skills at the city gate later. Kiss at the city gate? Mo Lien hugged her and floated forward with a tap of his feet. Isn't that too high profile? Scram. Arbor was so angry that she wished for nothing more than to bite him. You know little Sixth Zheng? Wasn't this weird topic changed a little too abruptly? Xiao Mu was caught off guard and was tricked into revealing the truth by a certain two-faced guy. Alarm bells rang in Mo Lien's mind. Not good. Her baby really knew little Sixth Zheng? When did they meet? And where did they meet? That was impossible. Could it be that this little Sixth Zheng knew his Baobao before him? How old would that be? 3 or 4 years old? 5 or 6 years old? Fuck, weren't they childhood sweethearts and innocent playmates? Get lost. When the 2 of them approached the city gate, they heard a commotion. Wu Xiao unblocked in front of Sixth Zheng and was currently cursing Wenren Ningjing furiously. Get lost, woman. Sixth Zheng's hand was cut. He's going to mutate soon. We have to kill him immediately. Wu Xiaolan was so angry that his eyes turned red. Bullshit. How did the 6th young master get injured? What do you think? If it weren't for a certain capable person who insisted on shooting with a bow and arrow and almost accidentally injuring a teammate, would the 6th young master get injured while saving someone? Wenren Ningjing's face reddened, and then she said angrily, no matter what, Sixth Zheng must die to prevent more people from being infected. Who dares to touch little Sixth? Arbor shouted angrily. Mo Lien couldn't stop her in time and only saw the little fellow dash over like a fleeing rabbit. For a moment, her emotions were all jumbled up, and her gaze turned sharp as she stared at 6th young Master Zheng. What are you all crowding around here for? Arbor pushed aside the sword-wielding Wenren Ningjing like a female leopard protecting her cub. Scram. Chapter 805. Mo Kingdom Capital, Guanlan City, Jade Hue Parlor. It was not yet night, but business was already flourishing. The girls were greeting and sending off guests at the entrance, bustling with noise and excitement as they sang and danced in celebration. Zhao Qiran was the only one seeking peace and quiet. She was sitting on a swing by the pavilion in the rear courtyard, her thoughts reverberating back and forth. Miss Ran, Miss Ran. A maidservant hurried over and bowed to her. Zhao Qiran's eyes brightened slightly. Is the Qin Estate's 2nd young master here? The maidservant shook her head at her and said cautiously, yes, it's the Duan Estate's eldest young master and 3rd young master inviting you over to sit. Mama Li wants you to prepare. Zhao Qiran's bright eyes dimmed bit by bit. At the same time, in an incomparably luxurious room on the 3rd floor of the Jade Hue Parlor, a red-clothed girl was lying on the bed, revealing her fair and graceful thighs. She was gently waving a silk fan in one hand. Princess, Snake Beauty is here. Let her in. This princess's voice was innately babyish. The moment she opened her mouth, it was soft and limp, as if a kitten's claws were scratching someone. Snake Beauty greets Princess. Snake Beauty swayed her body as she entered, acting as if she was going to kneel on the ground. Alright, alright, alright. The princess waved her fan and glared irritably at her. After the village was destroyed, where did you wander off to? Only now did you know to come back? It's really a long story to tell. Snake Beauty swayed her waist and casually sat down on the round stool in front of the bed. She reached out to pick up a cup of hot tea and took a sip. Princess, this subordinate almost lost her life to come back to see you. Snake Beauty said pitifully as she wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. Then she rambled on, exaggerating how Lien and Arbor had barged into the underground village. She also added how she had narrowly escaped with her life, how she had been trapped in the underground waters after escaping, and how much effort she had expended to come back. After this long-winded rambling, an hour had already passed. The Raksha princess, on the other hand, was completely engrossed in his story. Sigh, if I had known earlier, I would have gone to the underground village earlier. I could have gone on an adventure with you. I've experienced so many strange things. Princess Luosha raised her slender hand and waved the silk fan in her hand. When the Snake Beauty heard this nickname, her ears couldn't help but twitch. In fact, even though she was disguised as an adorable little Baldy, she was still disdained by Arbor. After parting ways with Arbor at Balon City's gate, she even went to take on a private job midway before returning to see the Raksha princess. However, she obviously wouldn't tell Princess Luosha about this. Alas! The Raksha princess sighed sadly. Snake, I recently accepted a business deal, but without you by my side to advise me, the business isn't going so well. The Snake Beauty revealed a smile that was comparable to a flower. Princess, what kind of big business did you take on? Someone placed an order in our Raksha ghost sect and paid an astronomical price to buy Northern Prince Mo's life. Princess Luosha waved her fan and bent her long and fair leg. For this reason, I even specially dispatched someone to invite Thief Sage to take action. Snake Beauty's smile was as gorgeous as a mountain flower. Is that so? Then, Princess, you must have succeeded. Not really. Princess Luosha sighed softly. Until now, those little cuties of mine haven't even been able to enter Balon City's city gate. Chapter 806. Sigh, without being able to get close to that Northern Prince Mo, what's the point of talking about buying my life? Princess Luosha touched her smooth skin and said softly, the most despicable thing is that I actually didn't see that legendary thief sage this time. Originally, I was secretly hiding in a dark place to take a look at him. Princess Luosha said indignantly, unfortunately, I didn't even see a single feather. The Snake Beauty's mouth twitched and she coughed awkwardly. Sigh, you're making my heart uncomfortable. Princess Luosha suddenly stood up and crossed her long white legs. She looked at the Snake Beauty with a smile. I heard that thief sage Ding Ting Ding is a pretty boy who looks pretty good. Moreover, he's a rarely seen playboy. Princess Luosha threw the handkerchief in her hand at the Snake Beauty's dumbfounded face. Princess Luosha's enchanting laughter sounded. Snake Air, look at your dazed face. I like to conquer those playboys the most. The more playful they are, the more I like them, Princess, can you stop being so coquettish? Snake Beauty coughed. Your topic is a bit off topic. Weren't we talking about the assassination of Mo Kingdom's crown prince? Why are we talking about Ding Ting Ding now? Do you think there's a playboy in this world that I haven't conquered? Princess Luosha's curved eyebrows knitted together. She seemed to have thought of something and sighed deeply. That enemy. Snake Beauty's eyebrows trembled fiercely. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. Snake Air, do you think a woman like me isn't beautiful? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Princess, you're the most beautiful, elegant, and feminine woman I've ever seen. Snake Beauty didn't even blink when she said this. Princess Luosha laughed sweetly. Snake Air, I like your glib little mouth the most. This subordinate's admiration for Princess is also like the endless Wanghai Sea domain. Snake Beauty made Princess Luosha laugh. She swung her long legs and laughed. Snake Air, you're the best. The moment you came back, you brushed away all my depression from the past few days. The snake beauty confidently revealed her most perfect smile. Princess Luosha reached out her soft hand and touched her own face. But I'm so beautiful, but I still can't conquer the cult master's licentious heart. Princess, have you ever thought that perhaps you and the cult leader aren't suited for each other? The snake beauty cautiously reminded her. How could that be? Princess Luosha immediately pouted and said angrily, I'm the sect master of the Luosha ghost sect, and he's the cult master of the demonic sect. We're both black-hearted goods. We're a perfect match. Snake beauty. That's just what you think. What do you think my cult master is doing now? Princess Raksha rolled around on the bed while hugging her blanket. Don't be reckless, princess. It's too painful to watch. The snake beauty ridiculed in her heart, but she still maintained a perfect smile on the surface. Didn't you just receive 2 beautiful servants? Don't mention it. They're so weak that they're already dead. The snake beauty was speechless. I don't think we have anything in common to talk about. Knock knock. A sound came from the door. Come in. The Raksha princess tugged at the thin robe that had fallen to her shoulders and looked at the door with seductive eyes. Princess, it's not good. The small team you sent to Balon City has all died, and their life lamps have all shattered. What? Princess Raksha sat up on the bed at once. Chapter 807. The Raksha princess's beautiful eyes gradually darkened. Go transfer the life lantern miniature over. And no life lantern miniature. You don't have it? The Raksha princess raised her voice slightly as she stared deeply at the trembling woman standing at the door. Useless things, scram. The Raksha princess flicked her sleeve forcefully, and a majestic wave of mystic energy jolted the woman at the door, sending her flying in a split second. She crashed onto the ground and spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Don't you think this matter is fishy? The people I sent were basically all level 7 or level 8 mystic cultivators, and there was even a level 2 spiritual cultivator mixed in with them. Isn't it strange that someone could annihilate this kind of team without a trace, and not even a trace of their life soul miniature was sent back? The Raksha princess wouldn't have imagined that the reason her team could be annihilated was all thanks to that defensive thunder barrier spirit weapon she had sent out. It cleanly and efficiently annihilated everyone, not even leaving behind a trace of their life soul. Before leaving, I even gave that idiot a spirit weapon. The Raksha princess said angrily, I don't know if this spirit weapon dropped in Balon City. How about you go look for it for me? That spirit weapon of hers was a spirit weapon with relatively strong attack power, so she couldn't bear to lose it just like that. Fortunately, it was a spirit weapon, so it was completely useless to normal people or mystic cultivators if they picked it up. I'm willing to serve you. The snake beauty bowed in greeting, a faint glint flitting through her eyes. She was still thinking about how to find an opportunity to meet that infuriating little stoic again. She didn't expect that the opportunity would be delivered to her like this. It simply couldn't be any more perfect. The Raksha princess tossed her a palm-sized stone. This item can sense spirit weapon waves within a radius of 5 li, princess, then I'll be leaving. Take care of yourself. The snake beauty caught the stone and giggled at the Raksha princess. The Raksha princess shook her coquettish wrist at her. Forget it if you really can't find it. Remember to come back earlier. As she said this, she even threw the snake beauty a coquettish glance, which made the snake beauty choke on her saliva and flee from the room like a fleeing rabbit. Heavens, the princess's scheming gaze was too disgusting. It was truly an eyesore. The snake beauty's body involuntarily shuddered, and a stoic face inexplicably appeared before her. She tossed that spirit-testing stone in her hand, and her lips curled into an indifferent smile. Little stoic, I really don't believe it. I really don't believe I can't handle you, brat. What's that right face doing right now? The corners of the snake beauty's mouth curled into a smile. Then her silhouette suddenly flashed and disappeared in the air. At this time, Xiaomu was standing in front of little Six Zheng, her icy gaze fixed on Wenren Ningjing, who had opened her mouth to rebuke him. Wenren Ningjing retreated a few steps in fright from Xiaomu's gaze, which immediately infuriated her brain-dead fan, Kong Rumio. This crown princess was abusing her power to bully people again. She was simply using her connections to intimidate others. Kong Rumio immediately jogged to Wenren-Ningjing's side and hooked her arm around Wenren-Ningjing's. She glared at Arbor as if they shared a common enemy. "What are you doing? Did our little Jing say anything wrong?" Sixth Zheng's hand was cut. "He's about to mutate and become a zombie. If you don't restrain him now, can you restrain him if he loses control of his mind?" Chapter 808. Don't talk to them. The two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians who had previously quarreled with Arbor walked over gloomily. "Deal with them immediately. I'll see who dares to make a move." Arbor blocked their way, his black eyes revealing traces of impatience. These ants from Celestial Medicine Valley were muddle-headed and especially good at stirring up trouble. They were truly too annoying. "Miss Jing." At this time, a loud shout was heard, and Xiangqin stumbled out from a dark corner. She threw herself before Wenren-Ningjing with an aggrieved expression and wailed, "Miss Jing, please uphold justice for our miss." "For you." Wenren-Ningjing didn't recognize this woman at all. On the other hand, the two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians asked hesitantly, "Are you Junior Sister Feng's personal maidservant?" Xiangqin nodded vigorously and wailed, "I beg Miss Jing to uphold justice for our miss." Those two Celestial Medicine Valley physicians sighed and turned to tell Wenren-Ningjing, "Miss, this is Junior Sister Feng Manyun's maidservant. I just happened to be reporting this matter to Miss Jing." Junior Sister Feng had just mutated, and she was immediately dealt with by the Crown Princess. One of the physicians gazed coldly at Arbor. "Crown Princess, you also said before that no one has special privileges. As long as it's a mutated corpse, they should be dealt with." Arbor's frosty gaze landed on that physician. "I see that you people from Celestial Medicine Valley not only have problems with your brains, but you're also blind." "What did you say?" That physician was so infuriated that his face flushed red. He was a grown man in his 30s, yet he was actually scolded like a dog by a little lady. Just the thought of it infuriated him. "You keep saying that little Sixth has mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" Arbor stepped aside, and the youth's tall and straight figure appeared in front of everyone. "The Crown Princess is right." Wu Xiao and nodded heavily. "Little Sixth is completely fine, yet you just have to talk about mutated. If you're not blind, then what are you?" The Celestial Medicine Valley physicians scoffed. "That's only temporary." "That's right." Wenren-Ningjing looked irritably at Arbor with a frosty expression. "Sixth young Master Jing merely hasn't mutated for the time being, but you've also seen that all of the injured have undergone a living mutation. This fact doesn't allow you to quibble." Arbor didn't wait for her to finish and suddenly attacked. A green vine drilled out of her sleeve and coiled around Wenren-Ningjing's neck. In the next second, Wenren-Ningjing was dragged to her side. This move could be said to be beyond everyone's expectations. "Ah!" Kong Rumio exclaimed. "What are you doing?" The dagger in Arbor's hand was pressed against Wenren-Ningjing's cheek, his voice as cold as ice on a snowy night. "Whether it will mutate or not, you will know after experiencing it yourself." Wenren-Ningjing and Kong Rumio screamed in unison. Wenren-Ningjing couldn't help but shudder all over. She felt that incomparably frigid dagger stick to her skin like a viper, abruptly slicing open a shallow wound on the side of her chin. "Your Highness Crown Princess, please stay your hand." Second young Master Do, who had come after hearing the news, hastily walked up to them, his pupils constricting as he looked at Arbor. Swish! The green vine coiled around Wenren-Ningjing's neck noiselessly withdrew. Arbor twisted Wenren-Ningjing's arm with one hand and abruptly pushed her into second young Master Do's embrace. Wenren-Ningjing staggered a few steps before falling onto second Do. Chapter 809. You'd best keep an eye on them. Don't test my patience again and again. Arbor glared at Second Do and the others with an impatient expression. Second young Master Do inexplicably felt that the little girl in front of him was slightly hostile towards him, but why? Ahem, ahem, ahem. Junior Martial Sister Wenren's coughs beside him attracted his attention. Second Do lowered his gaze and looked at his junior martial sister with a slightly complicated expression. His junior martial sister had been so easily frightened by the crown princess that her entire body was trembling, and her footsteps were unsteady. He reached out to support her and said, "Junior martial sister, it's fine. Relax, don't be too nervous." Tears gushed out of Wenren Ningjing's eyes, and she wept endlessly. "Senior martial brother, I won't turn into a zombie, right? Senior martial brother. You won't. It should be fine." The crown princess was cold-hearted, but she wasn't someone who would kill indiscriminately. Although this little girl was young, she handled matters with great propriety and was much more shrewd and ruthless than junior martial sister Wenren. Second Do looked back at Arbor with a complicated expression, but he saw that the latter didn't even glance at them out of the corner of his eye as he led little Sixth Zheng's group away. However, Kong Rumio was furious, and she scuttled to Arbor with her sword. "Stop right there. Junior martial sister Kong, come back." Second young master Do shouted. Kong Rumio's sword-wielding hand slightly stiffened, and she turned around with an expression of disbelief. She looked at second young master Do with an aggrieved expression and said, "Senior martial brother, she was the one who injured people. She was the one who injured Miss Jing. I'm telling you to come back." No matter how good second Do's temper was, it was almost worn out by Kong Rumio. If Wenren Ningjing hadn't been on good terms with her, Kong Rumio wouldn't have been worthy of standing by his side with her character and medical skills. She simply didn't know what was good for her. She clearly knew that she wasn't the crown princess match, yet she still insisted on throwing her life away. Second young master Do was a smart person, and smart people disdained associating with a group of idiots. Kong Rumio indignantly withdrew her sword. Her gaze met with Arbor's cold gaze, and she inexplicably shuddered. Second Do was now a little regretful. Why had he agreed to his master's request to bring this group of burdens out to practice medicine and gain experience? He was the last disciple of the Old Valley Master. Wenren Ningjing was the Old Valley Master's granddaughter. According to reason, Wenren Ningjing was his martial niece. Usually, she didn't need him to take care of her. However, because Wenren Ningjing was Elder Diyuan's only disciple, she was nominally his junior sister of the same generation. Martial Uncle Diyuan had given Wenren Ningjing to him for this experiential training. Under the doting of the Valley Master and Elder Diyuan, junior sister Wenren had developed an innocent and unruly character. Although junior sister Wenren's temper had toned down quite a bit after coming out to train, Miss Jing, who was used to being flattered by others, would definitely not be able to hold back her anger once she suffered a setback in reality. How troublesome! Second Do narrowed his eyes and sighed inwardly. On the surface, he had no choice but to put on a caring expression. He reached out to pat Wenren Ningjing's trembling body and softly comforted her. "Junior sister, don't worry. The crown princess is probably just joking with you." Wenren Ningjing gritted her teeth, her small face flushed red with anger. "Who would make such a joke? If the wound mutates, I'll die." The wound on her chin was actually very shallow, and there were no longer any bloodstains seeping out. However, she couldn't stand being frightened and kept feeling that the wound would mutate, so she felt uneasy and itchy all over. Chapter 8:10. Junior sister, it's already been about an hour since 6th young Master Zheng was injured. He's completely fine, which means that you'll also be fine. Compared to the shrewd, ruthless, and decisive crown princess, Wenren Ningjing was more like an immature little girl. Her intelligence and judgment were far inferior to the crown princess's. The problem was that Wenren Ningjing was 3 to 4 years older than the crown princess, yet she was so naive. Second young Master Do sighed helplessly. He patted Wenren Ningjing's shoulder and handed her a small box of ointment. "Junior sister, apply the ointment. You'll know in a bit that nothing will happen." Wenren Ningjing accepted the ointment dubiously and nodded tearfully. On the other end, Wu Xiao grinned and had just given his thanks. Then, he saw the crown princess grumpily roll her eyes at 6th young Master Zheng. "Are you an idiot?" Arbor grumpily tossed a medicine bottle into 6th young Master Zheng's hand. "You don't even know how to resist when someone wants to dispose of you?" Many thanks for saving me, sixth young Master Zheng blankly replied. It wasn't that he didn't resist, but that he was momentarily dazed by this crown princess. What a strange feeling. For the first time, little sixth Zheng, who was usually not very fond of interacting with women, felt that this bright-eyed crown prince consort's affectionate way of calling him little sixth Z actually made sense. What a foolish brat. Prince Mo walked to his Jojo's side in a bad mood and pulled her small hand. This brat was very strange. Even with his network of contacts, he actually didn't know when this brat had met Jojo. Prince Mo glanced at little sixth young Master Zheng and then pulled his Jojo up the city gate tower. At this time, Arbor's attention was already on the densely packed zombies howling endlessly outside the city gate tower. City Lord Lin, who hadn't closed his eyes for an entire day and night, ran over to the young couple with a head full of sweat. Your Highness, what do we do now? Our mystic cultivators are almost exhausted. If this stalemate continues, the cannons won't be enough. Gather all the mystic cultivators who can move. I want mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Arbor glanced indifferently at City Lord Lin. Don't worry. Mo Lien raised her hand and patted City Lord Lin's shoulder. The Marquis of Stability has already rushed over with his men. In addition, Commander Huey's men should be arriving soon. We just need to hold on for a while longer. Before they come, we have to defend. Lin Yongyi was overjoyed. He wiped his sweat and nodded repeatedly, good, good. Then this subordinate will immediately summon mystic cultivators level 5 and above. Not good, City Lord. There's a hole in the city gate. Zombies are jumping in from the outside. Why are you still talking nonsense? Hurry up and put on your armor to protect yourself. Have the body cultivators quickly gather at the city gate tower. City Lord Lin was so anxious that his forehead was drenched in sweat, and he rushed down the city gate tower with his men. Seeing that City Lord Lin didn't have the time to summon the mystic cultivators, Arbor walked up and said calmly, Mystic cultivators level 5 and above who can still crawl, get up and gather here. Those who were lying on the edge of the city wall, those who were half lying on the ground gasping for breath, those who were holding onto their swords, and those who were holding onto their sabers, all of them slowly crawled over from where they were standing and staggered to their feet. There were less than 100 mystic cultivators level 5 and above who could crawl and stand up. Chapter 8:11. They supported each other as they tried their best to stand up, but their mental exhaustion had already reached its peak. Perhaps someone only needed to poke them with a finger, and they would immediately collapse from fatigue. Arbor's lips curled as she swept them a glance. You guys aren't bad. Manly enough. Whether or not Balon City can hold on will all depend on you guys. Crown Princess, I'm not a man, but I can still crawl. But I can still crawl. A hoarse female voice came from behind the crowd. It was a very thin and petite woman who looked to be in her early 20s. Even though she was panting from exhaustion, her eyes were exceptionally bright and spellbound. Arbor raised her eyebrows. Of course, us women aren't inferior to any men. The woman laughed out loud and kicked the man next to her. Did you see that? The Crown Princess is praising me. Io, you wretch, you still want to compete with me at this point. The man shook his head speechlessly. Arbor turned to look at Mo Lien. The latter's eyes brightened slightly, and she hurriedly walked to her side and asked with a smile, What do you need me to do? Jojo. Arbor raised her hand and took out a jar of medicinal liquid from her inner world, tossing it to the mystic cultivators. Drink a mouthful. It can help you replenish your mystic energy as quickly as possible. Mystic cultivators recovered their mystic energy abnormally slowly, especially after it was depleted. It was even more difficult to recover it after it was depleted, and it could even damage their mystic meridians. Hence, when she had nothing to do, she had always been silently researching the mystic returning medicinal liquid. This jar could only be considered as semi-finished product and wasn't truly complete. According to her conjecture, it was still missing 2 key medicinal ingredients. However, this semi-finished product was already pretty good, and drinking it would only bring benefits to the recovery of mystic energy. After drinking it, I need you guys to do this. Arbor beckoned to everyone, and the 100 mystic cultivators gathered around with a whoosh. After Arbor said this, everyone nodded and looked at the jar. There wasn't much medicinal liquid in that jar, so everyone consciously only drank a mouthful. Once the medicinal liquid entered his mouth, he knew whether it was good or bad. With just one mouthful, the nearly exhausted profound energy in his body began to surge back. At this moment, all of them had excited looks on their faces as they looked at the crown princess excitedly. His profound energy's recovery speed had increased by more than 10 times. Arbor naturally saw that the effect of the profound restoring liquid was pretty good. Unfortunately, she didn't have a lot of semi-finished liquid and only had 2 jars in total. She took out another jar and handed it to the female mystic cultivator. "This is for you to use after you're done. Now, I need all of you to gather your strength and follow me." "Yes." Everyone strode forward, their voices shaking the city gate tower. Arbor grabbed Emolien's hand and called out, "Dutching." The two of them soared into the air and climbed onto the back of Qingluan. Hearing a cry, everyone looked up and saw a blue ancient divine bird carrying the crown prince and the crown princess out of the city gate tower. It spread out its beautiful wings and left a trail of green light in the air. "Everyone, don't just stand there, go." A mystic cultivator raised his arm and roared. Everyone raised their spirits and followed him to the edge of the city wall. The 100 mystic cultivators level 5 and above simultaneously circulated the profound energy in their bodies and abruptly blasted it toward the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Following this, the ground rumbled. Below the city wall, the 100 zombies were smashed to pieces by the mystic cultivators on the city gate tower, and a row of densely packed pits appeared in front of the city wall. Chapter 8:12. Qingluan suddenly cried out in the air and swooped down. It stopped when it was 7 to 8 meters from the ground and hovered in midair. The group of dim-witted zombies below noticed the abnormal movement above their heads. They raised their swollen and rotten heads and stretched out their withered branch-like arms to grab at Qingluan in midair while roaring. Unfortunately, they couldn't reach it. Arbor stood on Qingluan's back and looked down at the group of zombies before exchanging a glance with the crown prince beside him. The crown prince nodded and took out 2 barrels of kerosene from his inner world with a flip of his hand. He handed one of the barrels to Arbor. The two of them then began to pour the kerosene into the densely packed pits below. After pouring, they directly smashed the barrels on the zombies' heads, causing 2 of their heads to explode. At this time, City Lord Lin was leading a group of people to repair the holes in the city gate. More than a dozen body cultivators wearing thick armor blocked the front of the crowd like shields. They were constantly swinging their large swords and chopping at the limbs and heads of the zombies that burrowed out of the holes like they were chopping vegetables. At the most intense moment of the battle at the city gate, this savage couple started a great performance that inspired the citizens. A wisp of purple flame seeped out of Emolien's fingertip, and she abruptly threw it into one of the pits. The moment the flame came into contact with the kerosene, it exploded with a whoosh. A row of fire fiercely burrowed out from the ground. Under Emolien's control, the fire burned fiercely. In less than a second, a row of enchanting purple fire walls burned out. The fire walls that were as tall as a person successfully blocked the zombies' path. Although the zombies' bodies had mutated and they didn't feel any pain, they were still mortal bodies after all. A row of purple flames built a line of defense in front of the city gate, successfully stopping them in their tracks. Moreover, the bottom was supported by kerosene, so it didn't consume much of Emolien's spiritual energy. This method worked. His little girl was truly smart. This was much faster and more powerful than directly consuming large amounts of fire spiritual energy to deal with tens of thousands of zombies. Hundreds of zombies standing in front of the firewalls that couldn't dodge in time were directly burned to ashes by the purple flames. The mystic cultivators on the city gate tower erupted in intense cheers. Such a method could really hold off the corpse puppet army for a period of time. If they wanted to pass through, they would have to pass through the wall of fire. But under the purple flames, how could they remain unharmed? Emolien raised her hand and stroked the little girl's fluffy head. A smile flashed across the corner of her mouth. City Lord Lin also saw everything through the hole in the city gate and immediately shouted with trembling hands, "Everyone hurry!" Taking advantage of this opportunity, he cleared out the remaining corpse puppets. "We have to repair the city gate and hold on. Commander Hui and Mark Zhao will be here soon to save us." A series of blood-boiling roars erupted from within the city gates. Everyone increased their strength and hacked at the corpse puppets that had entered the city, quickly repairing the holes. Rumble. At the same time, Zhao Xing led thousands of armored elite soldiers and arrived before Hui Feng. When the people on the city gate tower saw that the elite soldiers had arrived, they burst into cheers. The mystic cultivators drank the second bottle of mystic restoring medicinal liquid and began to gather their strength to carry out the second round of smashing the ground. This was to prevent the first layer of fire from being extinguished so that the second layer of fire could be replaced in time. But from the looks of it now, it probably wasn't necessary. Zhao Xing, clad in armor, took the lead and led a group of elite soldiers to clear out the large number of zombies on the field from the rear. Chapter 8:13. Horse hooves galloped, kicking up dust and sand. The Marquis of Stability, Zhao Xing, and his two sons were both brave and skilled in battle. The 3,000 elite troops charged through the zombie army's camp with unstoppable force. Like a sharp blade, they stabbed straight into the enemy's rear and carried out a large-scale cleanup. Zhao Xing had already seen His Highness the Crown Prince standing on Qinghuan's back. Seeing that the prince was safe and unperturbed from afar, he naturally let out a sigh of relief. The large machete in his hand slaughtered the zombies with even greater force. "Your Highness." "Uncle, the Crown Princess and I are both fine." "Good, good." Zhao Xing made a hand gesture, having the 3,000 elite troops split into 10 groups to clean up the nearby zombies. At this time, Hui Feng and He Tian had also arrived with 2,000 royal guards. They cupped their hands at Prince Mo from afar and then led their troops into the heavy encirclement of the zombies. Immediately, Bailon City was filled with cheers. Both inside and outside the city were of one mind as they spared no effort to kill the zombies. The zombies that were originally climbing the city gate like a human pyramid were shot down by the cannons, while the remaining ones had their heads blown up by the arrows. The zombies between the firewall and the city gate had all been cleaned up. Lin Yongyi ran up the city gate tower and couldn't help but feel his scalp turn numb when he saw the mountain of zombie corpses piled up inside the firewall. If the zombie corpses were piled up a little higher, they would be able to climb up the city gate using that mountain of corpses and sea of blood. From the looks of it, after this battle ended, his Bailon City's city gate still had to be reinforced and raised. City Lord Lin had already thought of the post-war construction of the city's defenses, so he buried this heavy load at the bottom of his heart and raised his arm to shout, "Come, all mystic cultivators gather for another wave. Let's clear the path forward for our brothers. Cannoneers and archers, get ready. Fight for Bailon City. Fight for Bailon City." Everyone on the city gate tower who still had a breath left roared. The mystic cultivators carried out the last wave of attacks, releasing waves of mystic energy that shot towards the densest group of zombies below the city gate tower. The cannoneers and archers had also finished their last round, and all of their ammunition and arrowheads had been exhausted. The mystic cultivators collapsed on the ground in exhaustion. They could no longer move a finger. From below the city tower came the sound of 5,000 cavalrymen sweeping through the battlefield and the neighing of war horses. The ordinary soldiers wiped their sweaty faces and leaned on the city walls to watch, shouting hoarsely. Wenren Ningjing was also shocked by this scene. The anger in his heart had long been thrown to the back of his mind under such a hot-blooded situation. She turned around and said to the two doctors from the Celestial Medicine Valley who were watching with folded arms, "What are you guys still standing there for? Help save people." "Miss Jing." The two doctors were surprised. They had clearly fallen out with the Crown Princess just now, so why did the Celestial Medicine Valley still have to help treat Bailon City's citizens and civilians? Saving lives is the duty of a doctor. Wenren Ningjing rolled up her sleeves and helped an ordinary soldier covered in blood up, beginning to treat him. Kong Rumio was Wenren Ningjing's diehard fan. Although she was also a bit indignant, She was used to obeying Wenren Ningjing's orders. As a result, she was the first to run up and help Wenren Ningjing administer acupuncture and feed medicine. Those two doctors still wanted to say something, but when they saw Wenren Ningjing's cold gaze, they stifled the words in their hearts and went to save the patient with taut faces. In the end, they were still a bit unhappy, so they didn't control their strength. Chapter 8:14. Only after Wenren Ningjing frowned and glanced at them from the corner of her eyes did the two become slightly better. While helping, Kong Rumio couldn't help but mutter, "Little Jing, that crown princess is so arrogant, so why should we help her? Are we helping her?" Wenren Ningjing pursed her lips. She nimbly cleaned the wound and wrapped the gauze around the soldier's arm. This is a doctor's instinct. Regardless of how much enmity we have with that arrogant and rude crown princess, this has nothing to do with a doctor's duty. Business is business, private is private. We're saving people. Oh. Kong Rumio pursed her lips and handed a pair of scissors to Wenren Ningjing. Wenren Ningjing cut off the excess gauze and said to the soldier, "The wound can't touch water for the next 2 days. Recuperate well and you'll get better." "Many thanks, doctor." The young soldier blushed and stuttered. Wenren Ningjing nodded and stood up. When she turned around and saw little Sixth Zheng walking over, she couldn't help but look a bit embarrassed. Previously, she really thought that little Sixth Zheng's wound would mutate and become infected, which was why she insisted on taking care of little Sixth Zheng and wasn't deliberately targeting him. Later, after the Crown Princess's bullshit experiment, she realized that their newly inflicted wounds wouldn't mutate their bodies. Back then, after her chin was cut by the Crown Princess, she really was on tenterhooks for a full 2 hours, and the fear and depression in her heart had almost reached its peak. Later, reality proved that what the Crown Princess said was indeed true. She didn't mutate, and little Sixth Zheng was still fine. Why didn't his wound mutate like before? Wenren Ningjing didn't know the reason. She was just naive and unaffected, but not stupid. She felt that Arbor knew the reason, but judging from the Crown Princess's stoic, domineering, and arrogant appearance, she didn't seem like someone who would kindly dispel her doubts. "My apologies." Wenren Ningjing pursed her lips and weakly said this. Then, almost not daring to look at little Sixth Zheng's reaction, she ran to the next patient. Little Sixth Zheng was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he halted his steps and turned to look at Wenren Ningjing. Wu Xiao'an, who was following behind him, immediately grumbled, "TSK, just saying sorry and it'll be over. If it wasn't for the Crown Princess stopping them in time, your life would have been lost." Sixth Zheng glanced at Wu Xiao'an. Seeing the siblings, Hui Fan and Hui Ling, walking straight over, he politely nodded at them. Sixth Zheng. Hui Ling ran over and stopped several steps away from little Sixth Zheng. I heard that you were injured. Are you okay?" Hui Ling, why are you only showing your concern now? What could possibly happen to the sixth young master? Didn't he see that the sixth young master was still alive and kicking? But Hui Ling, you're too slow to realize this. By the time you realize that sixth young master is fine, I reckon that sixth young master's corpse will be cold. Hui Ling's finger moved, and a cold dagger flew towards the screaming Wu Xiao. "You cheap mouth, who's talking to you?" Sixth Zheng picked up the slightly plump youth and flung him aside. Wu Xiao and that guy almost crashed into the city wall. Grimacing in anxiety, he turned around and stomped his foot while shouting, "What are you doing?" "What's that?" The soldier lying on the city wall suddenly pointed to the sky and shouted. Everyone looked up at the sky one after another, only to see a huge flying mystic beast charging straight at the Qinghuan that the Crown Princess was riding. Chapter 8:15. Mystic Beast? It's a mystic three-eyed condor. Its attack power is very ferocious. It's the overlord of the sky, the king of level 13 mystic beasts. No, that's not right. Quickly look. How can there be a mystic beast with such a strange appearance? It's a three-eyed corpse condor. It's mutated. Amidst everyone's cries of alarm, that three-eyed corpse condor brandished its sharp black claws at Emo Lien and Arbor. It was extremely likely that its claws would tear apart a person's skin and flesh. Screech. Qing Yuan screeched, and a wing parried its attack. The three-eyed corpse condor was forced to fly back a few feet, but it was ready to attack. It only took a split second for it to let out a shrill cry, and its long sharp beak pecked at Qing Yuan's head. At this time, its jet-black wings had already decayed to the point that not even 2 feathers remained. When it flapped its wings, bits of flesh would fall down from time to time. Suddenly, its featherless wings fiercely flapped, and gusts of fierce wind blew. "Get down." On the city gate tower, Six Jing casually grabbed Hui Ling's shoulder and pushed her down a bit. The two of them quickly found a place to hide. All of a sudden, the sand and dust on the ground were swirled up by the fierce wind, seriously obstructing the line of sight of the 5,000 elite soldiers killing the corpses. The edge of the city wall was also destroyed by the frightening wind, and pieces of gravel were forcibly torn out, falling into the crowd one after another. Everyone helped each other as they rolled and crawled to escape to a corner of the wall, avoiding the three-eyed corpse condor's attack. Arbor's gaze was ice-cold as he looked at this beast wantonly churning in the sky. He slightly raised his wrist, and a circle of binding talismans flew to the three-eyed corpse condor's side with whooshing sounds. They heavily wrapped around the three-eyed corpse condor, forming a talisman array. Talisman power overflowed in all directions, tightly trapping that extremely noisy three-eyed corpse condor in the center of the circle. The three-eyed corpse condor dashed left and right within the talisman array, occasionally letting out hissing sounds. A green vine drilled out from Arbor's sleeve, and it directly whipped at the three-eyed corpse condor. With several whooshing sounds, the three-eyed corpse condor was whipped to the ground by the green vine, and it continuously fell down, smashing into the place where a group of corpses were gathered. Boom! The three-eyed corpse eagle struggled to continue its flight, but it was suddenly struck by a purple flame. Flames rose from its body and spread to a large group of zombies. The three-eyed corpse eagle roared as it rolled about on the ground covered in sand and dust. In the end, it was burned into a pile of ashes, and the corpse puppets that were caught in the fire also turned into ashes without exception, vanishing into thin air. At this moment, a loud rumble came from afar and thick smoke billowed. Arbor stood on the back of the blue Luan and looked down from the sky. He saw a white dot jumping closer and closer. Mo Lien snorted and smirked. "He's here too." By now, Arbor had also clearly seen the person's figure. The huge seven-tailed celestial fox swept its tail, sweeping away the surrounding corpse puppets. Duan Yu was currently standing on the seven-tailed heavenly fox's back as he tossed a pellet-sized firearm towards the zombie horde. Bang! Thick smoke came out again, mixed with the stench of burning. A series of crackling sounds could be heard. The seven-tailed heavenly fox suddenly leaped into the air, and its 4 limbs swiped twice in the air as it swiftly ran to Blue Luan's side. The two gigantic beasts looked at each other. Prince Mo, you're actually completely unscathed." Duan Yu waved his claws, but before Mo Lien could retaliate, he turned his gaze to Arbor. "Jojo, don't be scared, don't be scared. I've come to save you." Chapter 8:16. Mo Lien snorted. "Why are you joining in the fun? Go play on the side." Duan Yu glanced at him and ignored him. He continued to speak to Arbor. "Jojo, you must be tired out these 2 days. Look at how pale your little face is. Leave this to me. Go back and rest." Arbor glanced at him. To be precise, he was looking at the seven-tailed heavenly fox that was the size of a small mountain. Duan Yu stroked the seven-tailed heavenly fox's head and looked at Arbor with a grin. "Isn't our family's chestnut very big and very cute? Come, chestnut, greet Jojo." The seven-tailed heavenly fox extended a large furry paw and waved it at Arbor. Without warning, Arbor suddenly jumped over Qingluan's body. His figure soared into the air as he extended a small, fair hand and grasped one of the seven-tailed heavenly fox's toes. Mo Lien and Duan Yu were both dumbfounded. This was? He really had to shake Chestnut's hand and greet him. Prince Mo only felt like his heart had been struck by something. Heavens, his darling was so adorable. Any random strange action could cause ripples in his heart. Duan Yu's porcelain-white face flushed red, and he suddenly covered his face. Our dear seven-tailed heavenly fox also froze, unsure whether it should quickly withdraw its paw. In front of the seven-tailed heavenly fox, the little girl before them was as slender and weak as a flower. The mountain-like seven-tailed heavenly fox could crush her to death with a single toe. This scene was too beautiful, and everyone couldn't bear to look straight at it. At some point, Six Jing had already stood up from the city wall and was somewhat spellbound as he stared at the little girl with a smile in front of the snow-white seven-tailed heavenly fox. Why did he have a strange feeling that the little girl shouldn't have such an icy stoic face, as if that he had once seen her most beautiful smile? This feeling was too strange, wasn't it? Qingwan flapped its wings and shrieked at its companions on Paradise Planet, "Oh no! There's a flirtatious slut here to steal Master Silver. Qiu, Dian, little white snake, quickly come out and kill it." Unfortunately, Paradise Planet was completely silent. At this moment, no one could come out and kick the seven-tailed heavenly fox to death. Blue Luan flapped her wings and cried out in alarm, "Master Silver! Master Silver!" Why did he feel that Master Silver would be abducted by this damned fox? On the other side, the situation on the battlefield was largely under control. Mo Lian didn't need to worry about the rest, leaving it to Zhao Sheng and Hui Feng to clean up. In the end, the fire outside Bailon City burned for an entire night before it finally destroyed all of the filth. While Marquis Zhao and Commander Hui were cleaning up the remnants of the battlefield, Prince Mo dispatched Xiao Yi to lead a group of people to investigate the abandoned villages near Bailon City. Sure enough, they found traces of an underground village under another village. However, the underground village had long been deserted. Everyone had retreated. However, based on the traces left behind in the burned buildings, they could deduce that there had been a large number of corpse puppets here not long ago. This news was undoubtedly shocking. Xiao Ye's group was worried that they might have overlooked something, so they investigated the vicinity for an entire day and night before returning to the city to report the details. After Prince Mo finished listening to them with an indecipherable expression, he wrote a personal order and arranged for it to be transmitted to all of the fortifications in the entire country. Now, not only did they have to speed up the preparation of water sources, but they also had to dispatch city defense teams to investigate the villages as soon as possible. Chapter 8:17. At this time, Xiao Mu was looking at the incessantly bawling bald child with a headache. She feebly raised her hand to rub his bald head. "Don't cry." Arbor sighed. She reached out and carried him onto her lap, patting his back. "You monks also cry." "Monks are also human. Of course we cry when we're unhappy," the little monk retorted in a childish voice. "Benefactress, do you know your mistake?" The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. What mistake did she know? "You promised my master that you would take care of me. But ever since we entered the city, you left me in the room and didn't even look at me." The more the little baldy spoke, the more upset he became. He was sobbing. Arbor was at her wit's end. She raised her hand and patted his head. All right, don't cry. I've been busy these past 2 days." The little baldy bit his little sleeve and sobbed. "I'm starving to death, benefactress. Call me sister." Her eyelids twitched when she heard him call her motherfucking benefactress, but the little baldy's cries were earth-shattering. Arbor resisted the urge to run out of the door. She waved her hand and took out a juicy peach from her inner world and stuffed it into his arms. "Alright, don't cry. This is your compensation." The little baldy sobbed as he hugged the peach. He raised his pair of watery eyes and asked pitifully, "Just one? It's not enough. What have you been doing these past few days?" Arbor rolled her eyes. She took out 2 vegetarian dishes and a bowl of rice from the food box and asked, "Do you want to eat red braised pork?" The little monk's face flushed red. He hurriedly closed his eyes and waved his hand while hugging the peach. Not eating. Take it away." Arbor laughed at him. "You little monk, your 6 senses are obviously not pure. I haven't even taken it out yet and you don't even dare to look at it. Who knows, if I really take it out, you'll pounce on it and eat it happily." "Benefactress, don't say that." The little monk widened his pair of cute eyes and glared at Arbor angrily. Could it be that you're not? If you don't have meat in your heart, you won't be able to see meat in your eyes. Eating meat is just eating vegetables. If you have meat in your heart, you can eat radish as meat too. Arbor snappily picked up a radish with his chopsticks and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. What? You haven't eaten for the past 2 days. Are you going on a hunger strike? That's not it. The vegetarian dishes they make are not to my taste at all. The little monk swallowed a mouthful of white radish and was so angry that his face turned red. Benefactress, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Don't hug me again. When Prince Emo entered the room, he happened to hear this sentence. His figure flashed and he picked up the little fellow. The little monk's limp arms and legs trembled as he struggled with all his might to get off the ground. His pair of black eyes stared angrily at Emo Lien. Benefactor, you're too violent. Quickly put me down, or else you will regret it. Oh? Then tell me, how will I regret it? Emo Lien pursed her lips and faintly glanced at the little monk. The little monk widened his round eyes and his face was filled with indignation. I want to pee. Arbor was amused by this big and small duo. Emo Lien turned to look at him and her phoenix eyes suddenly lit up. Seeing that the little monk had amused Jojo, she decided not to bicker with him. Emo Lien loosened her grip and saw the little monk running towards Arbor. Benefactress, bring me to pee. Emo Lien wanted to slap this brat to death, but the smile on Arbor's lips instantly froze. Chapter 8:18. Emo Lien's lips pursed into a straight line, and she walked up to pick up the little monk in displeasure. I'll take you there. Thup. You're so fierce, I can't pee in front of you. The little baldy angrily shouted while kicking his legs. Emo Lien was amused. Don't worry, pee as much as you want. I'm not interested in looking at you. I don't want you. I want benefactress, wah. The little monk wailed pitifully. Duan Yu, who had just entered, couldn't help but be taken aback when he saw this. He snatched the little monk from Duan Yu's hands and glanced at him with a smile. You're so promising, even bullying a child. Emo Lien rolled her eyes at him. You came just in time. I'll leave him to you. Take him to pee. Duan Yu was dumbfounded. He looked down at the kicking little monk and then at the expressionless Emo Lien. Could he return this hot potato? Benefactress. The little monk looked at Duan Yu with disdain. I don't want you. I only want benefactress. Call me sister. Arbor irritably rapped his bald head and carried him out the door. Where did this weird little monk come from? Duan Yu speechlessly watched the two's departing figures before glancing at Emo Lien. Hey, when are we returning? It's not like we're going the same way. How are we not going the same way? Duan Yu folded his arms and glanced at him with a gloating smile. Jojo said we're going together. Emo Lien, that she was irritated by this punk smugness. After Arbor finished serving the little monk, he carried the child back. When he passed by the city gates, he happened to see Wenren Ningjing setting up a stall to treat patients. After treating a patient, Wenren Ningjing looked up and happened to see Arbor passing by. She looked away with a taut face, not very happy to greet this person. When Arbor walked up to Wenren Ningjing with the little baldy in hand, Kong Rumio immediately raised her chin like a rooster, vigilantly preparing for battle. What do you want now? We're treating these people right now, so we don't have time to deal with you. Kong Rumio said sternly. Here you go. The little stoic couldn't be bothered with Kong Rumio and directly threw out a box of ointment in front of Wenren Ningjing. Once in the morning and once in the evening, the scar can be removed within a day. After speaking without waiting for Wenren Ningjing to react, he picked up little Baldy and turned to leave. Kong Rumio was so angry that her face turned askew. She grabbed the ointment that was half the size of her palm and wanted to throw it away. Wenren Ningjing stopped her. She took the box of ointment, opened it, and sniffed. Her face was full of astonishment. What's wrong? Kong Rumio asked curiously. High-grade wound medicine. It smells even purer than the medicine made by my master. Wenren Ningjing subconsciously raised her hand to touch the shallow mark on her chin. Impossible, Kong Rumio said angrily. Maybe she tampered with the medicine and wanted to disfigure you. Wenren Ningjing shook her head. She won't. How do you know? She's such a proud person and disdains to do this. Benefactress, giving medicine is a good thing in the first place. If you don't tell other people about your good intentions, how can they understand you? The little monk couldn't help asking. Why do I need other people to understand me? Sigh, I'm really worried about you. The little monk sighed heavily. Arbor couldn't help but find it funny and rubbed his bald head. Let's go home for the new year. Chapter 8:19. Ever since she went to the Holy Water sect to cultivate, she hadn't been able to celebrate the new year at home for 7 years. This year, she had promised her mother that she would stay at home no matter what. Hence, after the party cleaned up the mess in Balon City, they hurried back to the Mo Kingdom capital. Fortunately, it was only a day's journey between the Mo Kingdom capital and Balon. They set off early in the morning and had already set foot in the Mo Kingdom capital by 10 in the evening. Zhao Ho had made preparations for the battle against the zombies in Balon City this time. All of the participating soldiers had donned special armor that could effectively defend against the zombies' scratches. Thus, after this battle, only a dozen or so people were injured, which was an extremely good result. After compensating the families of the dead and injured soldiers, Zhao Ho and Hui Feng's troops hastily bid farewell to the Crown Prince as soon as they entered the Mo Kingdom capital. They each returned to report to the Great King and the Queen. Mo Lien, along with Duan Yu and Arbor, led a few people and leisurely paced their horses inside the city. Sixjing, Wu Shaoan, and the others urged their horses forward to bid them farewell. Mo Lien felt somewhat vexed looking at this sixth young Master Zheng, especially when she saw him staring at her baby without blinking. She cupped her hands and whispered, "Many thanks to Miss for saving me this time. Farewell. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely repay this favor." He looked at Sixjeng, feeling strangely vexed. Arbor nodded at Sixjeng and said, "Take care." Even Duan Yu could see something fishy about the little fellow's bizarre attitude. This was truly strange. According to Duan Yu's understanding of the little fellow, this little stoic basically ignored strangers. Who was this Sixjeng? How did he inexplicably catch the little fellow's eye? Could it be that their ancestral graves were emitting green smoke? Duan Yu glanced at Sixjeng's departing figure with envy and jealousy. He secretly shifted his gaze to Mo Lien's face and tried to communicate with him with his eyes. "Duan Yu, what's going on?" Mo Lien. She proudly turned her head away from him. Before this, when second young Master Do had brought the people of Celestial Medicine Valley to bid farewell, it was very clear that Miss Chiao hadn't even glanced at second young Master Do out of the corner of her eye. Did he not like second Do? Duan Yu winked at Mo Lien. Speaking of which, just how many stories had happened while he wasn't around? His heart itched. He really wanted to know. The Celestial Medicine Valley naturally had a branch in the Mo Kingdom capital. Before leaving, second young Master Do hesitantly glanced at Arbor before leading the Celestial Medicine Valley group away. Second Do was also very suspicious in his heart. He always felt that the Crown Princess's eyes held hostility towards him, but why? Even junior sister Wenren, whom she had a small dispute with, was ignored by the Crown Princess. But why did she treat him like this? "Jojo, how did the Do family's second son provoke you?" Duan Yu asked curiously. He had heard a little about the Do clan's second son. He was brimming with talent and extraordinarily handsome. He had lived in the Celestial Medicine Valley for a long time, and his acupuncture skills were quite impressive. Why couldn't Jojo take a liking to such a modest and elegant young man? What a strange young lady. His surname is Do. Ah. This was the reason she looked down on him? Because his surname was Do? Wasn't this second young Master Do wronged? Duan Yu revealed a wide grin. That's right, it really isn't good to have the surname Do. Mo Lien glanced at him exasperatedly. Where was this person's integrity? It wasn't good to throw his integrity out to feed the dogs every day, right? Jojo, Sixth Zheng isn't actually a good person. Duan Yu continued to slander. Did you know? He's a member of the Zheng family. Chapter 8:20. Arbor was taken aback, and he turned to look at Duan Yu. Duan Yu quickly explained, "It's that Zheng family, the Zheng family that you loathe. Consort Zheng's nephew, 6th Zheng. Speaking of which, we're enemies with him, so don't get too close to him. If you get involved with the Zheng family, it'll be very troublesome in the future." It turned out that little 6th was actually from Consort Zheng's maternal family. This was something she didn't know in her previous life. Ever since little 6th joined their team, he had never revealed his surname and only referred to himself as little 6th, so she was completely unaware. Speaking of which, there's something you definitely don't know. Duan Yu held the reins with one hand and turned to look at the two of them. He said with a grin, "That Consort Zheng. Didn't Consort Zheng's title of noble consort just get stripped away by Consort Zheng and demoted to a normal consort before you left? What happened to her now?" Mo Lien and Arbor asked in unison. "Hee, the night before I left the country kingdom capital to find you guys, she was personally released from Sephora Flower Palace by the Great King." Duan Yu looked at Mo Lien with a chuckle. "I say, your dad is really amusing enough. He had just demoted him, and in less than half a month, he had promoted him back to his former position. He even wantonly rewarded the Zheng estate so much. I reckon that your mom must be quite furious right now." Mo Lien coldly glared at Duan Yu. Duan Yu rubbed his nose and spread his hands in exasperation. "I'm just stating the facts. Don't call her Consort Zheng anymore. She was promoted to noble consort by the Great King again. Oh, apparently, Consort Zheng is pregnant again. So your dad was happy and not only removed Consort Zheng's ban, he even promoted her again." Arbor was taken aback, and his lips curled into a sneer. "She's pregnant?" Duan Yu felt that there was something wrong with Darling Qiao's smile, but he didn't ask and nodded in high spirits. "Darling, she came out to make you unhappy again. How do you think we should deal with her? Who's with you? You can't just call me Bao Bao." Mo Lien gave him a look that told him to get lost. She rode forward and took Arbor's reins. "Jojo, don't think about these things. I'll take you home first." Right, let's go home first. We'll talk when we get home." Duan Yu also hurriedly chimed in. Arbor nodded. She was a little tired after being busy every day. She needed to rest for a few days when she got home. As for Consort Zheng, let's put it aside for now. In any case, the special beautifying pill that State Uncle Zheng had bought at a sky-high price had already been offered to her. After she took it for a while, she would be able to teach her a lesson. Arbor, Mo Lien, and Duan Yu turned onto Minshun Avenue, but they stopped after walking a few meters. They saw a carriage blocking the path at the corner. A miss inside the carriage had already been carried down, and two maidservants were frantically massaging her forehead as they called out repeatedly, "Miss Mississippi." Duan Yu raised his brows and gave Mo Lien a look that said, "Did you invite them here?" from across Arbor. Mo Lien rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. When he turned around, he saw an old doctor carrying a medicine box. He was being dragged by someone and was out of breath as he ran over. Mo Lien and the others dismounted and threw the reins to the retainers to handle. They weren't far from the Marquis' estate, and Arbor didn't have much of a noble style, so they just walked a few steps. That old physician crouched there and administered 2 needles to the miss. Suddenly, the miss's limbs started convulsing, and her face contorted in extreme pain. Chapter 8:21. Why is it like this? The old physician muttered to himself as he continued to perform acupuncture on that miss with a forehead full of sweat. The 2 maidservants were so anxious that tears fell from their eyes. Arbor simply didn't want to join in the fun. In any case, the other party had already called for a physician, so naturally, the physician would handle the situation. Mo Lien pulled her by the hand as she walked past the miss on the ground. She suddenly paused and gazed at that Mrs. Glabella as she softly exclaimed in surprise. Seeing that she had stopped, Mo Lien also stopped. Duan Yu glanced forward in amusement and asked quietly, "Qiao Qiao, what did you discover?" This wasn't some illness. There was actually a rune faintly discernible between that Mrs. Glabella. What was going on? Arbor immediately became vigilant. She tugged at Mo Lien's hand and pushed Duan Yu back. Her chilly gaze then turned to that miss who couldn't get up from the ground. "Physician, can you treat my miss or not?" Look at her pained expression. The maidservant couldn't resist criticizing that sweaty old physician. "This pulse is clearly normal. This old man has practiced medicine for many years, but I've never seen this kind of symptom." "What normal? My miss was fine in the carriage just now, but she suddenly clutched her chest and cried out in pain. Then she fainted." The maidservant shouted anxiously and angrily, "Physician, if you can't tell what's wrong, don't delay my miss's illness." The old physician was momentarily at a loss for words and also stood up uneasily. "Come, let me take a look." Arbor suddenly took a step forward and squatted down in front of that miss. When the maidservant turned around and saw a young lady even younger than her miss, her eyes immediately brimmed with distrust. "For you, what do you want?" "Xiao Yi." "Yes, young master." Xiao Yi led two people forward and lifted up those two shrieking maidservants without a second word. Each person slapped down, and the two maidservants' necks crooked, and they both fainted. What do you want to do?" "My family's young miss is the third young miss of Li Shaoqing of the Guanglu Temple. You better not mess around." The carriage driver stared dumbfoundedly at Xiao Ye's group. When his gaze landed on Mo Lian and Duan Yu, he felt that these two youths were out of the ordinary. "Sorry to trouble you." Arbor held Miss Li's hand and felt her pulse. With a wave of his finger, he took out a blue talisman and slapped it on her chest. The rune flashed in front of Miss Li's chest and surged into Miss Li's body. It went straight to the center of her eyebrows and eliminated the black rune. Miss Li promptly groaned and opened her eyes, meeting Qiao Mu's gaze in bewilderment. "It's all right. Hurry up and bring your young lady back to the mansion." Arbor stood up and left, leaving behind the coachman who kept thanking him with a grateful expression. After the three of them were some distance away from the carriage, Duan Yu couldn't resist asking curiously, "Jojo, did you use a talisman on her just now? Could it be that Miss Li isn't sick?" "She was hit by a forbidden curse." Arbor's small face was taut, and his expression was very solemn. "That is a group of people born from talisman practitioners who unscrupulously pursue dark forbidden curse talisman arts. Fortunately, this talisman practitioner's skills weren't up to par yet, so she only used the simplest kind of sickness talisman to break it." However, Arbor didn't expect that a talisman practitioner would appear in the Mo Kingdom capital. Chapter 822. As the name implied, a charm master was a type of person who wandered in the darkness and secretly used forbidden charms in order to achieve their own unspeakable goals. They were derived from talisman practitioners and had their own inheritances. After several hundred years, many unknown forbidden spells had actually long been lost. The most common illness talisman had different effects depending on the level of the talisman maker. The illness talisman on Miss Li was only a primary level one, so it wasn't troublesome to resolve it. However, what made Mo Lian and the others feel strange was that curse practitioners, a group that had been extinct for more than 100 years, actually appeared again. Without any warning. Let the talisman patrician family investigate and resolve this matter themselves. Mo Lian said indifferently, "The talisman patrician family wiped out a group of curse practitioners 300 years ago. They are the most unwilling to see the rise of curse practitioners. The Mu family absolutely won't allow the existence of curse practitioners to break the balance of the talisman world," Duan Yu also said with a smile. On the other hand, Arbor wasn't too worried. To put it bluntly, curse practitioners and whatnot didn't have much to do with her. As long as they didn't blindly come over to offend her, it had nothing to do with her no matter how they opposed the talisman patrician family. "Go spread the news to the talisman patrician family." Mo Lian turned around and instructed Huifeng. The latter nodded and went to do his job without a word. When Arbor returned home, she was just in time for her family's meal, which made everyone overjoyed. Wei Ziqin had been nagging these past 2 days about why the child wasn't back yet. Qiao Zhongbang and second uncle Qiao hadn't dared to tell anyone that Arbor was in Bailon City, so the two of them had been on tenterhooks for several days. Now that they saw that the little fellow had returned unscathed, they were naturally very happy. Arbor took the little monk's hand and introduced him to her family, saying that he was a little monk she had casually picked up on the road. This little monk was as soft and cute as a white bun, so Wei Ziqin took a liking to him at first sight. On the other hand, our dear Qiaosun became vigilant as he repeatedly glanced at the little monk. Seeing that she was a bit tired, everyone urged her to rest after eating. Arbor had suffered her first menstrual cycle these past few days, so she was a bit dispirited, so she washed up and went to bed. As for the little monk, she naturally left it to her mother to make arrangements. At night, in a dilapidated temple, the sound of an old lady coughing could be heard from time to time. On the icy ground, elderly lady was curled up in thin clothes. Even her only line jacket had been sold by Su Jiao, so she could only silently endure the cold and weep. She had never thought that her days would end up like this. It was one thing for her to eat and drink less, but the main point was that she was already so old, yet she was often beaten and scolded by her evil daughter-in-law. Su Jiao's patience with the elderly lady ran out on the third day after she moved into the rundown temple. She waited and waited, but Qiao Zhongbang and his wife didn't come to pick her up, and Qiao Zhongheng couldn't find a job as a guard. She didn't know how the family had survived these past few days, but they were practically fighting over food with dogs. In addition, the old lady was used to living a luxurious life. Whenever she fell ill, she would ask her to take care of her. Her anger rose day by day, and she couldn't help but beat the old lady up. She became addicted to beating her and would beat the old lady to death every few days when she was in a bad mood. Hearing the old lady's incessant coughing now, the anger in Su Jiao's heart surged again. After cursing, "Cursed old woman," Su Jiao jumped up, picked up a bamboo board she was used to, and swung it at the old lady. Chapter 8:23. Damn old hag, cough, 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 what are you coughing for? Do you still have peaceful days to pass, huh? I'll beat you to death, you old fart. You're going to beat me to death, cough, cough, I'm going to beat you to death, Elderly lady thrashed on the ground like a dead fish. Oh my, are you not letting people sleep anymore? Granny Nyo sat up and grumbled. Qiao Zhongheng also cursed. Are you done yet? Are you going to buy her a coffin if you beat her to death? Su Jiao spat and threw down the bamboo board with a slap. Beat her to death and end all troubles, so as to avoid seeing the world in that half-dead state. The other families in the corner didn't find it strange, and after mocking and ridiculing Su Jiao, they prepared to go back to sleep. Just then, the sound of horses neighing came from the rundown temple's entrance, and someone said, "Master, it's here." A row of torches burned in from the temple's entrance, and the leader was an elderly man in his 60s. When he saw the stammering old woman half lying on the ground, he was slightly taken aback. Someone beside him whispered something into the elderly man's ear, and the elderly man immediately understood. He promptly put on a benevolent face and walked up to help up the thin and frail elderly lady, who was so dirty that her color couldn't be discerned. "Sister-in-law, I'm your brother from the same family, Qiao Donghua. Do you still recognize me? We should have met a few times several years ago." Elderly Lady Qiao's mouth was cracked from the beating, but when she wanted to speak, it caused her mouth to tremble in pain. She pitifully looked at Qiao Donghua with panda eyes. "Why you are?" Yet Qiao Zhongheng and Su Jiao understood first, and they immediately revealed covetous gazes. They walked up with bowed heads and bent waists, exchanging pleasantries with Qiao Donghua. "Why, you're the same family's eldest uncle, right? Oh my, we've finally met our relatives." Qiao Donghua suppressed the disgust in his eyes and looked at them with a chuckle. "You're Zhongheng, right? I'm your same family's eldest uncle." Qiao Donghua actually had people investigate their identities long ago. If it weren't for the benefits, he wouldn't have thought of coming to the rundown temple to meet these country bumpkins. This unbearable old woman in front of him was the Marquis of Juan's mother, the crown princess's grandmother. Qiao Donghua's eyes flashed. Once Granny Nyo saw Qiao Donghua's decent attire, she was so anxious that she drooled. She went up to pull Su Jiao back and secretly poked her in a low voice. "Jiao, we've been through thick and thin together for these 10 days. If it weren't for me constantly helping you out, you wouldn't be able to look forward to good days now. I don't care, you have to take my family with you." Su Jiao pursed her lips noncommittally. Granny Nyo became anxious upon seeing this, and she went up to pinch her hand as she whispered, "If you return to the main family, you'll have one more brother and one more helper. My son and 2 grandsons are all capable of helping you." Right. Madame Bo also hurriedly stepped forward and said to Su Jiao with a fawning expression, "Younger sister Jiao, our 2 families have been together for so long, so we know each other very well. Take us with you, it'll be easier for you in the future." The other people in the dilapidated temple also looked at them enviously. They secretly regretted not building a good relationship with Qiao Zhongheng's family from the start. Su Jiao straightened her back like a proud peacock, looking down on these lowly commoners in the corner of the rundown temple. Humph, when she returned to the Qiao family's main family and became the 3rd young mistress, she definitely wouldn't let off Qiao Zhongbang and his family of devils. Arbor reached out to rub his small nose. Chapter 8:24. Xiao Yao, who had brought the water in, hurried over. "Miss, did you catch a cold?" "I'm fine." Arbor drank a bowl of hot porridge after washing up. After eating, she lazily returned to bed. Xiao Yao couldn't help but laugh. "Master and Madam came to see you this morning, but left when they saw that you were asleep. Madam said to go to the courtyard for dinner tonight." Arbor nodded. It was already past lunchtime. She wasn't too hungry after eating a bowl of porridge, so she sent Xiao Yao out. After her afternoon nap, she had a bowl of sweet soup. The little fellow was still lazily reading in bed when she looked up to see Xiao Yao walk in with a strange expression, holding several invitations. "What is it?" The matriarchs of the Qin family, Mu family, and several other noble families, as well as the prince's consorts, have all sent you invitations, inviting you to admire the plum blossoms, the bamboo, and the scenery. The little fellow's fingertips fluttered as she flipped a page of the book. "Just 1-0? Xiao Yao's mouth twitched. "Cough. This servant acted on my own initiative and rejected them all for you. However, the great king's 2nd consort said that she would personally visit you a few days ago. I reckon that she will insist on inviting you to the plum blossoms banquet. I don't have time." The little fellow didn't even bother to lift her head. "Miss, what are you busy with these 2 days?" Xiao Yao asked honestly. "Do you need this servant to help you?" "There's nothing to be busy with. I'll just sleep and read some books. I'm too lazy to go out." Arbor put down the book in her hand and looked at the sunlight outside the window. Her bright eyes narrowed, and she flipped out of bed in an extremely good mood. "Let's go and stroll around our family's garden." Xiao Yao smiled and followed the little fellow out the door. Along the way, she said, "Miss, will you be entering the palace on New Year's Eve? According to tradition, Her Majesty the Queen will gather the princesses and princesses, as well as all the noble ladies to the palace to make dumplings." Of course, the missus didn't actually need to do anything. It was just a formality. "I'm not going." Darling Qiao rejected without a second thought. "I'm not going anywhere for New Year's this year. I'll stay at home and accompany my mother." Xiao Yao sighed and said with a smile, "Madam will be overjoyed." "Yes, give everyone more food on New Year's Eve. Give out more delicious food." But Xiao Yao replied happily. On New Year's Eve, madams and young misses gathered in the Queen's brilliant Sun Palace Hall. Queen Zhao, whose melancholy had been washed away by the joyous atmosphere of the new year, sat at the head of the table in high spirits, smiling as she looked at the group of noble women. Although it was supposed to be making dumplings, it was just as Xiao Yao had said. It was just a formality and there was no need for the young misses and madams to do anything. Only the servant girls would take some ready-made dumpling wrappers and fillings from the kitchen and fiddle with them. "Consort Jing is here." Following the announcement, everyone stopped what they were doing and stood up to salute her. Consort Jing, with the support of her personal maid Kaling, slowly walked in wearing a spacious satin robe and a graceful and luxurious appearance. "Greetings to Consort Jing." Everyone saluted in unison. Consort Jing stroked her temples and said with a smile, "You may all rise." Then, supported by Kaling, she walked in front of the queen and slightly curtsied. Consort Jing smiled and said, "This concubine greets your majesty the queen." This concubine's body has been a bit heavy these past 2 days, so I woke up late. Please forgive me, elder sister. The queen coldly glanced at her, her gaze seemingly sweeping over her flat stomach. Then, she sneered, younger sister's body is heavy, so there's no need to be so courteous. Sit. Thank you, your majesty. Consort Jing seductively sat down and swept her gaze over everyone. She pretended to be surprised and said, why don't I see the crown princess? Chapter 8:25. Queen Zhao was infuriated. This was simply rubbing salt into the wound. A while ago, her son had come to tell her about this matter. This stoic face would not enter the palace on New Year's Eve. She would only enter the palace on the first day of the first lunar month to pay a New Year's visit to the great king and queen, as well as attend the New Year's banquet. According to the usual practice of previous years, the princesses, commandery princesses, noble ladies, and noble ladies would all enter the palace to go through the motions. However, her daughter-in-law said that she would not be coming, so she, as her mother-in-law, couldn't take it lying down. This morning, Hua Xian had properly comforted her, which made her feel a bit better. Consort Jing, this bitch, jabbed Her Majesty the Queen's heart with one sentence. Consort Jing chuckled while covering her mouth. This consort heard that the great king's second consort held a plum banquet and personally sent an invitation to the crown princess, but she was turned away at the door. Everyone's gazes then shifted to the great king's second consort, Shu Quan, who was sitting in the first seat in the second row on the left. Shu Quan stood up gracefully and curtsied to the queen before curtsying to the noble consort. Afterwards, she spoke unhurriedly like a young lady from a noble family. It was Quan who was impetuous. She was not turned away at the door, and the Marchioness of Jian personally welcomed her. She said that the crown princess has been feeling unwell ever since she returned to the capital. Queen Zhao's expression eased slightly, and she said with a nod, this consort also heard about it. I have yet to congratulate Consort Cheng for choosing another daughter-in-law. A middle-aged consort seated below Consort Cheng commented with a smile, it is all thanks to your majesty's great fortune. She plans to welcome Li Xiu East into the estate after the New Year's Eve. Queen Zhao's expression was inexplicable. Consort Cheng's Mo Jiao had married beautiful wives and concubines one after another. On the other hand, why did her outstanding son seem to have been bewitched by the little stoic? There was no one else in his eyes besides that stoic face. The Queen Dowager probably won't be coming back for the New Year's Eve this time. Commandery Princess Ichen is accompanying her, and she is still recuperating at Ziyu Villa. Queen Zhao explained with a smile, tomorrow's New Year's banquet will be held in this Queen's brilliant Sun Hall. Early the next morning, the great king would gather all the civil and military officials for a grand ceremony. After the ceremony, it would be the New Year's banquet and another round of rewards. Consort Zheng couldn't help but snort when she saw that the queen had changed the topic and stopped talking about that unruly crown princess. She thought to herself, I don't believe that you, Madame Zhao, really like that stoic-faced daughter-in-law that much. Queen Zhao's momentary change in expression was already a clear indication of the problem. Since Zhao sure held a grudge against the little stoic, she naturally had to make good use of her. Consort Zheng curled her lips. When she recalled the humiliation she suffered at the hands of the stoic face, she was filled with indignation and couldn't eat or sleep in peace. The noble madams and young misses below had already started fervently discussing what clothes they should wear and what rouge and face powder they should apply for tomorrow's New Year's banquet. Queen Zhao only felt that although she was sitting in the main hall, she felt unusually lonely in her heart. Her eyes were fixed on the crowd, and she felt that the chatter of those madams and young misses seemed to be separated by a layer of gauze, sounding hazy and indistinct. Meanwhile, the entire Qiao family was in jubilation at this time. Everyone of all ages was crowded inside the spacious drawing room. The adults were busy making dumplings, while the children were playing with flower balls in their hands. The Qiao family had given all the servants a day off and told them to go home for a reunion. They could only return at noon tomorrow. The remaining servants who were all alone were called over to help out. Chang Zai, Old Bai, Sun Yang, and the other old loyal servants of the Qiao family were already familiar with their master's New Year's celebration. Chapter 8:26. Several of the new servants were all shocked. Master had just said that there weren't any masters or servants today. Everyone here was a family, and they were all working together to make a reunion meal. Dongmei didn't know how many years it had been since she had eaten a full meal. She was an orphan and had experienced the fickleness of human nature since she was young. She had struggled her way through life until she was sent here by a broker not long ago and was luckily chosen by elder sister Chunying. Ever since she started working in the Qiao estate, she no longer had to worry about starving or freezing. A few days ago, she received 2 sets of new winter clothes and new jackets. At that time, her tears fell. She secretly told herself that she had to work hard. It was rare to meet such a good master. If she didn't work hard, she would really be a fool. Today was New Year's Eve, and Master and Madam actually allowed all the servants who didn't go home to have a reunion meal together. This once again refreshed her understanding of the Master's family. "Stop playing." Wei Ziqin lightly patted her younger daughter's hand and said with a smile, "Look at your sister. What kind of toy are you making?" Xiao Lin pouted and said, "Mother, you only care about sister. Look at sister's dumplings. They're so crooked and ugly. How can they be prettier than mine?" It was rare for Arbor to feel awkward. Don't tell me that her talent in cooking was very mediocre. "Ulas." Wei Ziqin raised her hand to pat her younger daughter, but Xiao Lin ran away in a flash and sprinkled a handful of flour on her younger brother Qiao Sen's little face. Qiao Sen looked at his sister with a dumbfounded expression. The white dumpling-like little monk beside him actually chuckled and clapped his hands together. Just as he was about to open his mouth and chant, "My Buddha," he freaking flicked the flour all over his face. His nose and little mouth were stained with some white. Xiao Lin looked back and laughed out loud. "His Highness the Crown Prince is here. His Highness the Crown Prince is here." Chang Zai excitedly ran through the door and shouted. The whole family hastily patted off the flour on their bodies and hands. Just as they were about to turn around to welcome them, Mo Lien strode inside with a bright smile. "Dad, Mum, Xiao, I've come." Wei Ziqin laughed so hard that her eyes couldn't be seen. Duan Yu, who was following behind her, involuntarily harumphed and pursed his lips. He eagerly ran up to her and said, "Auntie, I'm also here. I especially came today to freeload." "Hey kid, what are you talking about? If you like, you can come here to eat every day." Wei Ziqin couldn't stop smiling. When Mo Lien heard this, she immediately ran to her mother-in-law's side and said, "Mother, we have to make him hand over his rice, oil, and salt." Shoo, Auntie isn't as petty as you," Duan Yu said with a grin. Arbor smirked and walked over to Mo Lien with a plump dumpling that he had made. He stuffed it into his hands and said, "I made it. Jojo, the dumplings you make are really pretty. I can eat 30 of them in one go if you make them. Can't you eat until you're full?" Duan Yu speechlessly rolled his eyes before also saying, "I can also eat 30 of them." Qiao Zhongbang laughed heartily. "But then let's hurry up and make more dumplings. Aren't you returning to the palace today?" Arbor quietly asked as he tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes curved as he smiled at him. "I'll stay up with you until the new year. We can just return before 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, the great king would solemnly hold a grand opening ceremony. At that time, all civil and military officials would have to attend and present memorials to express their respect, singing the praises of the great king as a formality. Chapter 8:27. With the addition of Mo Lien and Duan Yu, the house became much livelier. After finishing the dumplings noisily, Arbor took out a sumptuous meal from the food box. 2 tables were set up in the living room, and the whole family joyfully ate a reunion dinner without distinction between master and servant. Wei Ziqin took out small embroidered pouches and distributed them to the servants who were beaming with joy. She also gave the children all kinds of gold ingots with flower marks on them. The ingots for the children were for fun, while the ingots for the servants were 10 pieces of low-grade mystic currency that could be used to purchase items. This type of mystic currency was the newest circulating currency that the imperial court had just issued. It was forged from magnetite, so it was naturally divided into low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, and supreme-grade mystic currency. Reportedly, it was not only used in the Mo Kingdom, but also in many northern countries. Every fortification of various sizes could use this type of mystic currency to register in advance so that they could purchase items from the food and cloth stores the next day. Dong Mei tightly clutched the embroidered pouch in her hand. She only felt that the main family was all good people, and that she had a lot to look forward to these days. Arbor sat on the eaves, holding a cup of hot tea in one hand as she looked up at the bright moon in the distance. In the past, at this time, she would accompany the old sect master, and aunt masters on the snowy peaks to admire bamboo and drink tea, quietly waiting for the new year to come. Perhaps he would never return to such a life again. Jojo, are you thinking of the sect? Mo Lien's large, warm hand gently grasped her soft, small hand. When Arbor looked up, she saw the man's phoenix eyes rippling under the moonlight. As long as Jojo is here, the sect won't disappear. Mo Lien reached out to pinch her small chin before pointing downwards. Look, father and mother are so happy today. Arbor looked down and saw the two foodies, Xiao Lin and Xiao Sen, hugging a large fruit box and happily munching on multicolored fruits. Xiao, who was collapsed on the side. Perhaps because he ate too much, he was rubbing his stomach with one hand. Xiao Yao stifled her laughter as she brought him a bowl of digestive soup. Brother Xiao, who scrambled to his feet and smiled foolishly at Xiao Yao with an embarrassed expression. Duan Yu was currently playing horse diao with his parents and second uncle. When she looked over, she happened to see her mother grinning from ear to ear. Oh my, Duan Yu, are you always going easy on Auntie? Auntie got burnt again. Auntie, you're so lucky today. Xiao Zhongbang pretended to be angry and snorted. Why not? With Buddha's blessings, how could he be unlucky? She saw the little monk sitting cross-legged on a soft cushion next to her mother's feet. He was holding a wooden fish in his hand and knocking it while mumbling something. The corner of second Uncle Qiao's mouth twitched. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Little master, can you stop knocking? Which monastery would hold morning prayers until this hour?" What a funny little doll. She didn't work hard in the morning, but when night came, she was cramming. That's not it. The little monk answered second Uncle Qiao's question as he knocked on the wooden fish. This young monk is doing tomorrow's morning prayer. Second Uncle Qiao glanced at him exasperatedly. Why are you doing tomorrow's morning prayer now? Duan Yu guffawed. Is there a need to ask? It's definitely because he can't get up tomorrow morning. The little monk lowered his head with a blush and continued to knock on the wooden fish, casting everyone's laughter to the back of his mind. It wasn't until Arbor was feeling a bit sleepy that the sound of firecrackers and drums rang out, waking her up with a start. When she looked again, she saw that her drowsy state from earlier had thrown herself into Mo Lien's arms. Chapter 828. The little monk had already finished tomorrow's morning lesson and was having fun with Qiao Senator. He ran over to tug at Duan Yu's robes and insisted on dragging him to set off the firecrackers. Duan Yu couldn't win against the children and was dragged out the door. Mo Lien floated down from the eaves with Arbor in her arms and followed them out. In the darkness of the night, the light from the firecracker suddenly shot out, breaking the silence of the area with a bang. Arbor was a bit sleepy and fell asleep in a daze. She didn't even know when Mo Lien carried her back to her room. She didn't sleep well the entire night because of the firecrackers. However, all the madams and noble ladies had to enter the palace to pay Her Majesty the Queen their New Year greetings before 7 a.m. today. She didn't go to the palace yesterday, so she naturally couldn't challenge Queen Zhao's dignity today. After freshening up, Arbor changed into a bright red dress and a cloak made of firefox fur of the same color. At this time, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Xiao Yao was at the front holding a lantern to illuminate the way. Arbor walked to her mother's courtyard and happened to encounter Xiao Lin, when she reached the front of the main room. "Sister, Happy New Year. Give me my New Year's money." Xiao Lin was wearing a pink jacket with a sapphire blue fur cloak wrapped around it. When she saw her, she quickly ran up with a grin and hugged her arm. "You're asking for a beating, asking sister for things all day long." Wei Ziqin happened to walk out and chided with a smile when she saw Arbor stuffing a pouch to her youngest daughter. Xiao Lin stuck out her tongue and shrunk her neck to hide behind Arbor. She waved the pouch in her hand and shook it. "Sister gave it to me. I'll have brother-in-law give me another one later. Make a pair, he." Xiao Lin stuck out her tongue. Wei Ziqin looked at her daughter with a headache and raised her hand to smack her again. "Look at her mischievous appearance. You're not allowed to cause trouble for your sister when you enter the palace today." "Mother, what trouble can I cause?" Xiao Lin shook her head and said, "I don't know how obedient I am." As they were talking, Xiao Zhongbang walked out with his youngest son, Xiao Senator. He smiled and said, "Are the three of you ready? It's time to go." "It's been done for a long time." "Father, we were waiting for you," Jolin said. "Then let's go." Xiao Zhongbang had just finished speaking when a small bald head popped out from the side of the door. The little monk looked at Arbor pitifully. "Benefactress, where are you going?" Arbor glanced at him and waved at him. "I'll take you to eat meat." The small monk immediately shook his head like a rattledrum. I'm not eating. This little monk is determined not to eat meat." Wei Ziqin secretly pulled Arbor's sleeve and whispered, "Jojo, are you going to bring Kong Kong into the palace?" "Yes," Arbor nodded and said, "Today's New Year's banquet is divided into 2 parts, and I won't be back until very late. It would be too pitiful to leave the little monk alone at home." Wei Ziqin thought about it and agreed. She also couldn't bear to leave the child alone at home, but she was still a little worried. "Will Nyang Nyang not like it?" Arbor said coldly. "What does it have to do with me whether she likes it or not?" Wei Ziqin was speechless. This daughter of hers was always so cold. People who didn't know her would definitely think that she wasn't easy to get close to. The family boarded the Marquis's carriage and headed towards Huabei Gate. Today's New Year's banquet invited officials of 5th rank and above and their family members. It wasn't early for them to leave, and the roads would probably be a little congested. Chapter 829. Sure enough, before they even entered Huabei Gate, the official road started to get a little congested. The carriages were connected to one another, and they couldn't see the end of the road. The driver was a young man called He Zi. He was in his early 20s and worked for his father. He spoke and acted very nimbly. He Zi's driving skills were pretty good, and the carriage moved steadily. Along the way, the whole family was laughing and chatting. From time to time, he would carry the little monk over to tease him. The little monk put his palms together and kept muttering to himself. "Kong Kong, how many years have you been a monk?" Xiao Lin deliberately teased the little monk and scratched his little head. The little monk looked at her with some confusion. He blinked his eyes and counted with his fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kong Kong has been in the temple for 4 years. Benefactress's sister, why are you asking this? When Arbor heard this title, the corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. Her father, Xiao Zhongbang, also twitched. Ever since this child came to their house, the titles he used were especially strange. Benefactress's father, benefactress's mother. Arbor reached out and pulled the little monk in front of her. "Call me big sister. Do you still want to eat meat?" Not eating. Vegetables?" The little monk hesitated for a moment. "It's okay to eat less." Arbor moved her finger and took out a juicy peach from her inner world. "Call me big sister." "Big sister." The little monk immediately reached out and took the peach. Xiao Lin laughed loudly. "Master, madam, young master, young miss, sit tight." He Zi's anxious voice came from outside. With a bang, the carriage shook violently. Fortunately, the carriage was sturdy enough and didn't fall apart after being hit. The little monk exclaimed and almost threw the peach in his hand out. "What's going on?" Arbor asked coldly. He Zi's anxious voice came. "How are you driving? Why did you hit someone's carriage?" Pa!" A whip lashed out. Arbor suddenly lifted the curtain. "Hitzi." Z half bent his waist and straightened his back. He hurriedly replied, "Miss, hey, Z is fine. Who dares to block our Duke of Qing's estate? Get out of the way. Our master said that if you don't know etiquette and don't give way, we won't care if you're beaten to death or injured." The crafty servant driving the carriage didn't wait for Hazy to speak. Blackie's face was full of anger, and he said indignantly, "It was clearly you who came from behind to take the path, yet you still dare to speak like this. You're being unreasonable." Moreover, they had not reached Huabei Gate yet. This section of the road was still quite wide. If you wanted to overtake me, you could have done it. Why did you have to crash into me? No one would believe you if you said you did not do it on purpose. Hitzi. Xiao Mu coldly gazed at that wicked servant. Blackie is here. Knock him back. They didn't care if they were killed or injured. All you need to do is ram. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility for it. Since Arbor had spoken, Blackie naturally obeyed. He whipped the horse, and the carriage crashed into Duke Qing's mansion's carriage. Bang! Duke Qing's mansion's horse neighed and raised its hooves slightly. Continue. Arbor had already set up a defensive barrier with one hand, enveloping the entire family and shielding them from all the vibrations. Blackie also got excited. When he heard Mrs. Words, he immediately continued to control the carriage and crashed into Duke Qing's mansion's carriage 3 times in a row. Blackie's driving skills were much better than the crafty servant's. The crafty servant didn't have enough strength, so he didn't control the carriage properly and was ruthlessly hit by Blackie's carriage. Chapter 830. One had to know that ever since the horse carriage incident, second Uncle Qiao paid special attention to safety when building horse carriages for the family. The materials used in the horse carriages were all of the best quality. How could the Duke of Qing Estate's horse carriage beat the Qiao Estate's? Suddenly, the carriage flipped over, and the Duke of Qing Estate's horse carriage fell to the ground with a bang. A figure rushed out of the horse carriage at an extremely fast speed. The items in the carriage all jolted out, and the scalding hot tea spilled all over the ground. Audacious dog slave. A stern shout rang out, followed by a powerful sword aura that struck towards Hazy with the force of a thunderbolt. If this strike hit, Hazy would definitely lose his life on the spot. Arbor raised her hand and sent out a wave of profound energy, directly repelling the opponent's sword aura. How could the opponent dare to receive it? He only felt a mighty wave of profound energy rushing towards him, as if it would tear him apart in the next second. At the critical moment, an old man suddenly appeared and sent out a wave of profound energy to meet it. The 2 waves of profound energy collided in midair, causing a loud bang. The passing horse carriages stopped in fright, and no one dared to move forward. The old man's right hand was slightly numb from the shock of the profound energy, and shock appeared in his eyes. Looking up, he saw the other party's horse carriage stop, and a red-clothed girl came down from it. Her clear gaze fell on them, and her face was expressionless. She was so young, but her profound energy cultivation was actually above his? The old man's eyes emitted a bit of disbelief. Damn it. The man who attacked earlier was in his early 20s. His face was very pale, as if he was anemic, and traces of gloominess floated in his eyes. At this moment, his black cloak had already been torn to shreds by the profound energy, revealing a gray robe inside. His entire person was somewhat in a sorry state. Bastard, you dare to do this to this young master. Slap. A heavy slap landed on his face from a distance. This slap contained profound energy, and half of Shi Guangjin's face was swollen in an instant. Shi Guangjin was caught off guard, and was a bit stunned. That old man hurriedly rushed over and pulled him behind him. Third young master. Shi Guangjin's face suddenly became very ugly. His malicious eyes locked onto Arbor, as if he wanted to eat her alive. Crown Princess. Lightning floated behind her and whispered, "This man is Duke Qing's 3rd son, Shi Guangjin." "I've dealt with it," Arbor said coldly. Without even glancing at Shi Guangjin from the corner of his eye, he turned around and boarded the car. Without any hesitation, Lightning reached out to grab Shi Guangjin's neck. Provoking their vicious crown princess on the first day of the new year, especially trying to knock over the Marquis's carriage, directly touching the Crown Princess reverse scale. This was really like carrying a lantern and courting death. "Hero, please show mercy." How could Lightning listen to his nagging? With a whistle, 2 more shadow guards appeared beside him and blocked the old man's Xian Qi with one hand. The cold sword was unsheathed, and the sword in Lightning's hand actually pierced towards Shi Guangjin's chest. "Who dares to cause trouble outside Huabei Gate? Violence is not allowed in front of Huabei Gate." Imperial Guard Commander Hui Feng, who had received news that someone was fighting outside Huabei Gate, hurriedly led a team over. From afar, he saw the sword in Lightning's hand piercing toward someone's chest. Hui Feng's brain spasmed, and he acted to stop him without thinking. "Commander Hui, you came at the right time. Quickly save me." Shi Guangjin breathed a sigh of relief and hid behind Hui Feng as if he had caught a life-saving straw. Chapter 8:31. Shi Guangjin didn't expect that this young lady from the Qiao estate was completely different from any girl he had known before. She was someone who would make a move on you if she said so. She was ruthless and merciless. How could he, an elder, who be a match for 4 or 5 people? Seeing that he was in trouble, Commander Hui arrived. Shi Guangjin immediately shrank behind Hui Feng as if he had found a life-saving straw. Hui Feng still hadn't figured out the situation. He couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the cowardly appearance of the 3rd young master of Duke Qing's estate. "Get out of my way." A cold voice rolled into Hui Feng's ears like a clap of thunder. He was startled. Who was this voice? When he turned his head to look, his jaw almost dropped in shock. "This general greets the Crown Princess." Hui Feng hurriedly restrained his shock and stepped forward. He lowered his head and cupped his fists in greeting. Arbor coldly glanced at him. "This person offended me in front of the palace gate. Should he be punished?" Hui Feng swallowed his saliva. He felt that the situation wasn't good. Looking at the Crown Princess's cold and emotionless expression, she couldn't be thinking of. How did 3rd young Master Shi offend the Crown Princess? Hui Feng only felt that cold sweat was about to drip down. He cursed Shi Guangjin's 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. This bastard, of all people to provoke, he just had to blindly anger the Crown Princess. Was this person someone who could easily let go of you? He intended to overturn my carriage and murder me. Murder? This was a serious crime. Hui Feng hurriedly turned his head and glared at Shi Guangjin. "How dare you, Shi Guangjin?" Shi Guangjin saw that the situation wasn't good and immediately cried out, "There are so many carriages coming and going on this official road. Anyone can see it. My carriage was overturned by her. How can you say that I wanted to?" Slap. Arbor waved her sleeve and slapped Shi Guangjin's other cheek across the air. Now, it was completely symmetrical. Both sides of Shi Guangjin's face were puffed up like fermented buns, except that it was a little red. "Did I allow you to interrupt?" Arbor said coldly. Hui Feng's eyelids twitched, and he raised his sleeve to wipe his sweat. In the past, he had always heard He Tian and the others nag in front of him, saying that their future crown princess was not someone to be trifled with, and that they could mess with anyone but the crown princess. Previously, when he saw the crown princess in Bailon City, Hui Feng still didn't have a concrete idea of who she was. He only knew that the crown princess was a rather aloof person who was expressionless no matter who she met. Now that he had seen how she dealt with Shi Guangjin, Hui Feng finally had a preliminary understanding of the crown princess. "It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding." Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, the old man hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over. Previously, when Shi Guangjin ordered the boy servant to crash into the Qiao family's carriage, he had advised against it. Unfortunately, Shi Guangjin didn't listen, which led to the current situation. At this time, their state Duke of Qing's estate's carriage had collapsed, and the crown princess's carriage had stopped, blocking the entire road. The carriages coming from behind had no choice but to stop. Several upper-class madams, young misses, and young masters dismounted and got off their horses, watching the commotion from afar. The state Duke of Qing's estate had lost face this time. "Where are the crown princess's royal guards?" Arbor shouted coldly. Lightning and the others gathered behind her with a whoosh, each of them standing ramrod straight, their backs straight like pine trees. Chapter 8:32. Strip this person's clothes for me. With Arbor's command, Lightning and the others swiftly pounced forward. Shi Guangjin was enraged. Just as he was about to resist with mystic energy, Lightning suddenly struck the back of his neck with the hilt of her sword, causing him to fall flat on his face. Ow! Shi Guangjin howled in rage. The madams and young misses in the distance also used their handkerchiefs to cover their mouths, their eyes revealing disbelief. Heavens! Did the crown princess order them to do that? The other party was the Duke of Qing Estate's third young master. Wasn't the crown princess being too unreasonable by doing this? After all, she hadn't married the crown prince yet and was only the crown princess in name. Wasn't she afraid of losing the Wang family's dignity by doing this? When the great king and queen blamed her, they would directly revoke her title of crown princess. Prince Consort. The maidservant supported one of the great king's second consort Shu Quan's arms and whispered in her ear, "That's the crown princess? She's really impressive, not even putting the Duke of Qing Estate in her eyes." No wonder she said she wasn't feeling well that day and dismissed the prince consort just like that. Shu Quan indifferently glanced at that young maidservant. Don't speak nonsense. Especially after entering the palace, you have to know propriety and etiquette. If your words were to fall into that person's ears, do you know what kind of punishment you'll receive? She jumped in fright and hurriedly wanted to kneel, but Shu Quan pulled her back. All right, I just want to remind you that you should speak according to your status. As she spoke, she sneered, her eyes filled with ice dregs and fragments. Otherwise, you won't have a good ending just like that foolish third son of the Duke of Qing Estate in front of you. Shi's entire body trembled. When she looked over, she saw the Duke of Qing Estate's third young master kneeling in front of the crown princess after his arms were pressed down and his legs were kicked. Shi Guangjin's face was filled with shame and humiliation, and he angrily shouted, "Slut, you haven't married His Highness the Crown Prince yet. Yet you're putting on airs in front of others. Who are you to deal with me now? I'm the third young master of the State Duke of Qing's estate. Do you dare to touch me?" "Shut up." Hui Feng slapped Shi Guangjin's face. Previously, he didn't know that Shi Guangjin actually insulted the crown prince consort like this. As expected, he was truly the most good-for-nothing in the State Duke of Qing's estate. This unscrupulous dog actually dared to wantonly insult the crown princess in front of Huabei Gate. If these words fell into the crown prince's ears, he would lose his life on the spot. "Commander Hui, I've always respected you for being in charge of the safety of the Forbidden Palace. But now, he was willing to be a lackey? Are you going to allow this woman to bully the people of the State Duke of Qing's mansion like this?" Hui Feng was so angry that he was amused. Does the third son of Duke of Qing's estate know what he's saying? Such a brainless thing. If it weren't for his father, big brother, and second brother, he would have been killed a few years ago. "What are you doing? Don't touch me. Audacious dog slaves." Shi Guangjin struggled with all his might as he was pressed down on the ground. His eyes were incomparably red, as if they were injected with blood. Lightning and the others didn't pay attention to his incessant barking. They directly tore off his clothes and pressed down on his arms, forcing him to kneel in front of Arbor with his head lowered. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't move his body. "Jojo!" Xiao Zhongbang and Wei Ziqin poked their heads out of the carriage with slightly anxious expressions. Chapter 8:33. Earlier, Jojo had them all stay in the carriage and not a single one of them should come down. At this moment, Wei Ziqin was very anxious as she watched. If Jojo beat up that State Duke Qing Estate's third son here, would there be any adverse effects? She was very worried. Arbor turned his head and gave his parents a "don't worry" look before turning back again and coldly glaring at Shi Guangjin. According to the rules, what punishment should be meted out for uttering wild words and offending the crown princess? Hui Feng's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Shi Guangjin naturally wouldn't answer the crown princess, so he said, meted out a punishment of less than 60 beatings by flogging. Such a light punishment? Wouldn't flogging a mystic cultivator 60 beatings be like tickling an itch? No wonder everyone likes to diss me. It turns out that the punishment is so light? Arbor was enraged and coldly looked at Hui Feng. Think carefully again. What exactly is the punishment? Hui Feng's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. As a grown man, he was actually a bit unsteady under the little girl's piercing gaze. He stammered, "Weiss, meted out 100 beatings by the military rod." Not enough. Arbor immediately vetoed. Think carefully again. If you flogged him again, he would die. While Hui Feng cursed 18 generations of Shi Guangjin's ancestors in his heart, he kept praying to the heavens, "Your Highness, come quickly. This subordinate can't hold on much longer." Speak. Arbor shouted coldly. Hui Feng hastily said, 200 beatings by the military rod. Arbor's eyes were cold as he aloofly swept a glance at Hui Feng. Then what are you guys still standing there for? Flog him. Flog him now. Bring a stool over for me to sit on. I want to personally count for him. Everyone. Hui Feng secretly peeked at Shi Guangjin. This damn grandson, you provoked him yourself. Someone come, fetch the military rod. Immediately, 2 soldiers came forward, dragging their batons. They stood on either side of Shi Guangjin, one on his left and one on his right. Arbor sat down on an armchair carved from pear blossom wood. She raised her hand, and Xiao Yao immediately understood and ran down from the carriage to hand her a cup of hot tea. Hui Feng's eyes twitched. Arbor took a sip of tea, looked at the 2 soldiers leisurely, and said indifferently, "I heard that the military rod in your barracks is also a subject of study. For example, there's a method called drag beat. When you hit someone, you drag it out a little. Every time you hit someone, your skin will break and blood will flow. Laymen don't know the ropes and will think that you hit someone very hard. In fact, you don't use any strength at all." As the crown princess spoke coldly, Hui Feng and the soldiers around him broke out in cold sweat. "If you want to use this method to fool me, then don't. You can give it a try." The moment Arbor finished speaking, Hui Feng and the others simultaneously knelt on one knee and said in unison, "This subordinate doesn't dare." "If you don't dare, then hit him." Arbor said coldly, "If eating alone doesn't increase your strength, I don't mind finding another 2 people to hit him." The 2 soldiers who were flogging him instantly straightened their backs, not daring to have any other thoughts. They got someone to press Shi Guangjin down and swung the military rod at Shi Guangjin's buttocks on the spot. Shi Guangjin was publicly flogged outside Huabei Gate. He instantly lost all face, and his entire body trembled in anger. In the beginning, he didn't take the military rod seriously. After all, he was a mystic cultivator. He just couldn't bring himself to do it and only felt humiliated. But gradually, that wasn't the case anymore. He couldn't keep using mystic energy to protect his buttocks, right? Chapter 8:34. Mystic energy could also be exhausted, okay? Moreover, there was also a saying about being beaten with a military rod. The rod would always hit the same spot, and as time passed, even a man made of iron wouldn't be able to endure it. After using mystic energy to block 100 or so strikes for him, the remaining 70 to 80 rod strikes were solid hits to the flesh, causing Shi Guangjin to grimace in pain and howl incessantly. Watching from afar, the great king's second consort Shu Quan's eyelids were also twitching wildly, and alarm bells were ringing in her heart. She inwardly warned herself, "Don't bump into the crown princess, this ominous star." Some people were born not to be trifled with. The maidservant was even more alarmed by her earlier ramblings. The prince consort was right. One should be careful and prudent in whatever they did and said. A single mishap and they would end up like this 3rd young master of the state Duke of Qing's estate. Not only would they lose all face, but they would also be covered in bruises. Those imperial court officials and family members who had dismounted from their horses and alighted from their carriages only dared to watch from afar. The crown princess angrily rebuked the state Duke of Qing's estate's 3rd son. Who would dare to go and persuade such a big commotion? Who would dare to step forward and be the bird? After 170 rods, Shi Guangjin only felt that the place where he was beaten was already about to smoke from the pain, and his flesh was probably about to rot. The two lowly soldiers' beatings were also very torturous. When the rod struck down, it would bounce in the opposite direction. It looked like the blows were quite light, but in reality, there were clots of blood under the skin. Even if Shi Guangjin was a level 8 mystic cultivator, he still had to properly drink a pot of blood. At this time, the crowd was slightly clamorous. The carriages and such in the distance all moved to the side to make way for the people who were dashing over. The person in the lead was a man in his 50s. He was hale and hearty with bright eyes, and when he flew over in court attire, his footsteps were vigorous and vigorous. Behind him was a man in his 30s, who closely followed behind him with a majestic gait. When Lightning saw the newcomers, his expression changed slightly, and he lowered his head to whisper into the Crown Princess's ear. Crown Princess, State Duke of Qing and eldest young master have arrived. Arbor looked up and coldly swept a glance over. His gaze landed on a young man wearing a white foxfur coat behind the two. This person had a sickly look on his face, but his appearance was not bad. His eyebrows were raised and his black eyes were bright. He was supporting an old woman as he walked over. Behind the two of them were 5 or 6 madams and young misses. When the madam saw Shi Guangjin being tortured on the ground, she immediately let out a sorrowful cry and was about to rush forward. However, Duke Qing and the old woman glared at him coldly at the same time, and he could only freeze on the spot. Arbor stood up with a cold glint in his eyes. He didn't have stage fright when he met Duke Qing. Duke Qing, you've brought your family here. Are you here to denounce me? Father, save me, father. Father, save me. When Shi Guangjin saw his father, brother, and others coming, he struggled with all his might and screamed. Hui Feng, who was standing behind Arbor, was sweating profusely. This matter was really getting bigger and bigger. He secretly prayed in his heart that Duke Qing had grasped the situation well. He felt that if the Crown Princess in front of him wanted to punish someone, she would definitely do it to the end. If the State Duke of Qing dared to obstruct her halfway, the Crown Princess wouldn't spare him either. Fortunately, the State Duke of Qing wasn't like his brainless third son at all. He was here to ask for punishment. Shut up, you bastard! Duke Qing angrily rebuked, exasperated at his son's failure to live up to his expectations. This subject deserves 10,000 deaths. This subject was not strict enough in teaching his son. I was shocked to hear that my son had offended the Crown Princess in front of Huabei Gate. Please forgive him. Chapter 8:35. Aren't you angry at me for beating your son 200 times? Arbor asked coldly. There was no expression on his paralyzed little face. My son offended the Crown Princess, so he deserved it. Although the Crown Princess was still expressionless, Lightning, Hui Feng, and the others standing behind her could feel that the Crown Princess's imposing manner had loosened a bit. They couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Duke Qing's eldest son, Shi Guangfeng, glanced at his third brother, Shi Guangjin. When he saw that his brother's buttocks were already bloody, a trace of unwillingness flashed through his eyes. He took a step forward and knelt on one knee in front of Arbor. My younger brother rudely offended the Crown Princess. As the eldest brother, I was also in the wrong for not being strict enough. I, Guangfeng, am willing to take the rest of the beatings in place of my younger brother. Arbor's cold gaze fell on Shi Guangfeng. He looked at this man who didn't have a particularly outstanding appearance but was full of righteousness. Shi Guangfeng was a famous young general in the army. At the age of 28, he had already been conferred the title of Yangwei General. Xiao Mu's gaze made everyone in the State Duke of Qing's estate tense up at once. In particular, Shi Guangfeng's wife, Madame Su, was tightly clenching the handkerchief in her hand and looking at her husband worriedly. After a long while, just as everyone's breathing was getting heavier and they were about to suffocate, Xiao Mu suddenly raised her hand. Stop! In fact, the two soldiers were already covered in cold sweat when the people from Duke Qing's mansion arrived. They were also under a lot of pressure as they heavily reprimanded Shi Guangjin in front of Duke Qing and Yang Wei General. When they heard the crown princesses shout, they hurriedly put away their batons and returned to the troops behind Hui Feng. Duke Qing, do you know why I publicly beat your third son? Arbor moved his finger and took out the listening talisman. He directly played Shi Guangjin's original voice for Duke Qing's family to hear. Bastard! Bastard! Duke Qing was so angry that smoke came out of his head. This bastard was actually his son? He had served the country and the people all his life. How could he have given birth to such an ignorant little bastard? What did he do? Your son rushed up and tried to knock over my family's carriage. My parents and siblings are all in the car. I once swore to the heavens. If anyone dares to hurt my family, I will make them pay for it. Duke of Qing, for the sake of the crown prince, for the sake of you and General Yang Wei, I will let him go today. Arbor's voice was so cold that it made people feel as if they were in hell. You have to bring him back and discipline him well. If he runs into me again, I'll kill him. The Duke of Qing's heart was greatly shaken by these last few words. The General of Prestige also abruptly raised his head to look at this young girl with an astonishing aura. There were more than 100 people in the huge arena, including those who were watching the show. No one dared to make a sound. The Duke of Qing didn't even dare to look directly at the crown princess' eyes, which were as cold as snow. The sound of horse hooves came from outside Huabei Gate. The rider was so fast that his figure was like a swan. In an instant he arrived in front of Arbor and the others. Prince Mo dismounted from his horse and rushed to Arbor's side with a whoosh. He stretched out his arm and hugged her. He pulled her over and looked her up and down. Jojo, what's the matter? Are you hurt? Everyone chuckled. Why didn't they know that His Highness was blind before? Shi Guangjin was lying there covered in blood. As soon as he rushed over, the first thing he asked was if the crown princess was hurt. Chapter 8:36. I'm fine. The little stoic calmly shook her head. Seeing that he hadn't had time to change out of his court robes, she knew that he must have run over right after finishing the opening ceremony. This was indeed the case. The State Duke of Qing had also rushed over after receiving the news after the opening ceremony ended. The Crown Prince had even gone to the study to speak with the Great King for a while. It was only after he left the royal study that he was informed that his darling had quarreled with the State Duke of Qing's third son at Huabei Gate. He had rushed over, so how could he have bothered to change his clothes? He was worried that his lovely wife would be taken advantage of. Your Highness, please forgive us. The State Duke of Qing and General Yang Wei hastily bowed and begged for forgiveness. Prince Mo was just about to reprimand them when the little stoic tugged at the corner of his shirt. Alright, I'm fine. It's just that Mom and the others suffered a bit of a shock. Arbor naturally wouldn't let that person off easily if someone came looking for trouble on the first day of the new year. How could Wei Ziqin, Xiao Zhongbang, and the others still sit in the carriage? They all got out at this time. Mom, are you all right? Prince Mo ran up to support her. Everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when they heard him call her Mom so smoothly. Wei Ziqin hastily pulled his hand down and saluted in deadly earnest. Greetings to the Crown Prince. Prince Mo hastily reached out to support her and didn't pay much attention to how the others looked. Could it be that she wasn't? Wasn't Jojo's mother his mother, so what if he called her Mom? At this time, Xiao Zhongbang had already exchanged a few pleasantries with the State Duke of Qing. The State Duke of Qing repeatedly apologized, and Xiao Zhongbang hastily pacified him. The bloodied Shi Guangjin had already been helped down. Madame Nei He of Duke of Qing secretly wiped her tears on the side. Jing was beaten too miserably. You still dare to say that? The old madam of the State Duke of Qing estate glared at her hatefully. If you hadn't indulged him all along, would he have gotten to this point today? How many times have I warned you? If Jean doesn't control his temper, sooner or later he will bring disaster to the whole family. Grandmother, don't be angry. The sickly second son of Duke Qing's mansion, Shi Guangyun, hurriedly said softly. Old Madam reached out to pat her second grandson's hand. Looking at Madame He's pouting lips, she couldn't help but get angry. Look at what your son and daughter have become. Grandmother, if you want to talk about third brother, then talk about third brother. Why do you have to bring me, your granddaughter, into this? Next to Madam He, an 18-year-old girl couldn't help but talk back. For the sake of her face, old Madam could only glare fiercely at that young girl. She turned her head and looked at Madam He with disdain. Look at the good daughter you taught. Ro, help me walk. It's grandmother. Another young lady of about the same age came forward to support the old madam. She looked gentle, elegant, and delicate. On the other side, the Arbor family also got into the carriage. At this time, with Crown Prince Imo following beside the carriage, how would the numerous carriages and horses in front dare to act rashly? They all hurriedly moved to the side, forcibly opening up a spacious path for the Chiao family to pass through first. Brother-in-law, Happy New Year. Take your New Year's money. Mother, why are you covering my mouth? Xiao Lin lifted the curtain. When Imo Lien heard the word brother-in-law, it was very much to her liking. She immediately laughed heartily as she took out the New Year's gift she had people prepare in advance and handed it through the window. Xiao Sen's eyes lit up. He immediately closed the window and followed Xiao Lin's tone and said something. Wei Ziqin was both amused and annoyed as she knocked her son's little head. Don't learn good things. See you tomorrow. I fell asleep. My throat hurts from coughing. Sigh. Chapter 837. The little monk chanted a Buddhist proclamation and clasped his hands together. Wealth is merely a worldly possession. How can a person wholeheartedly stare at? Arbor casually picked up a pastry and stuffed it into his small mouth, immediately silencing the little monk. Who knew where this child learned his nagging habit from at such a young age? She could see now that great Master Kongyin didn't bring him along on the journey, probably because this child's nagging gave him a headache. Prince Mo urged his horse to follow beside the carriage, so the journey was naturally very smooth. His small eyes would secretly peek at his wifey in the carriage from time to time. Seeing that her complexion wasn't that good, Prince Mo's heart was in a mess. Arbor was indeed a bit stifled. She hadn't even entered the palace on the first day of the new year, yet this kind of incident had already happened. She didn't know what kind of rumors were spreading inside and outside the palace right now. When she entered the palace later, she would be endlessly vexed just by recognizing people. The small banquet that Her Majesty the Queen held before the new year was only a small-scale one. So many royal concubines, princes, and princesses didn't attend. Even if not all of them would attend today's New Year's banquet, she reckoned that at least 80 to 90% of their relatives would attend. A layer of frost covered the little stoic's face. Whenever she recalled that Prince Imo had 15 to 16 siblings, her head would ache endlessly. Just the fucking concubines alone numbered several dozen. The old great king really was a scoundrel. He married one concubine after another and gave birth to a string of children. Just looking at it was irritating. Jojo. Prince Mo cautiously called out to his wifey through the carriage curtain. Arbor looked up and rolled her eyes grumpily at him. Prince Mo's heart thumped again, and he immediately thought of the source of the disaster. Jojo, if you're still unhappy, I'll order people to take care of Shiguangjin, that son of a bitch. His father, Qiao Zhongbang, who was holding a cup of tea, freaking shuddered, and he hastily called out, Jojo. I see that you're not happy. The little fellow rolled her eyes at him again. Prince Mo immediately gave her an aggrieved look. Jojo, I'm fine. Wei Ziqin couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. She reached out to put down the curtain. All right. We're about to enter the palace. Don't be like this in front of outsiders. In the eyes of outsiders, the way this young couple interacted with each other was like a pair of sweet, inseparable lovers. The crown prince could only sigh when he couldn't see his little wife. He urged his horse to follow the carriage, thinking that once they entered the palace, he would find an opportunity to privately comfort his little wife. Get someone to investigate why that Shiguangjin is so stupid that he wants to fight with me. There had to be a reason for this. Arbor didn't believe that two people who didn't even know each other would be at loggerheads the moment they met. The little fellow lifted the curtain and swayed her tender little face in front of the crown prince, causing a certain someone's heart to flutter. I've already investigated. We'll get back to you soon. Emolien had already sent someone to investigate. You're not allowed to smile at me. The little fellow's wooden face was expressionless. Prince Emo paused and the smile froze on his face. You're annoying me. Darling Xiao slammed the curtain and put it down. Just now, when she saw the crown prince galloping over on his horse, she inexplicably felt that he was so handsome that it was infuriating. Chapter 8:38. At this moment, when she saw Crown Prince Emo grinning at her with a pair of curved phoenix eyes that rippled with ripples, her small heart actually started pounding madly uncontrollably. Oh, this was her heart. How could it not be controlled by her? So it was all his fault, causing her to be unable to control her heart. Smile, 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 what smile? You're not allowed to smile at me. The moment she put down the curtain, she could still hear his hearty laughter. The little fellow was so angry that she ground her teeth and twitched her fingers. Qiao Zhongbang looked at his daughter with fear and trepidation. What did he think she was going to do? In the end, he saw the little fellow take out a fresh carrot from her inner world and bite down on it with a crunching sound. She thought that a certain person's big head was biting down. Wei Ziqin was immediately amused. She wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulder and pinched her little face with a smile. She felt that the little fellow was a bit cute when she was angry, and she was even more lively than usual when she was expressionless. The carriage entered Huabei Gate and smoothly entered the Forbidden Palace. They followed the spacious path paved with limestone slabs all the way to the entrance of Kongjian Gate before stopping. Once they reached the inner door, everyone had to get off the carriage and change into a carriage or a small sedan. The Crown Prince's carriage had already stopped at the side. Prince Emo flipped off his horse and ran to the side of the carriage. He saw the little fellow peeking out of the carriage with a carrot in her mouth. He didn't even think before picking her up. When he looked down, he couldn't help but be amused. Jojo, are you hungry? Don't worry, I've prepared breakfast for you in the carriage. Let's eat a bit before we go. Benefactor, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Shut up. Prince Emo looked down in annoyance at the little baldy who reached out to grab a corner of his robe. Have you done your morning ritual? Yes, I've done half of it. The little baldy inexplicably answered, looking a bit guilty. What do you mean half of it? Emolien pulled a long face and scolded in a low voice. It was really quite frightening. The little monk was a bit frightened and answered in a trembling voice, that's because his sister wants to run away. Arbor glanced at the two of them in annoyance. Continue your chanting after dinner. Don't disturb him in Jojo's private time. The little monk knew that he was in the wrong. Prince Emo stretched out his hand and carried him to the carriage. He picked up his vegetarian meal and tasted it. Then her big eyes suddenly lit up. Delicious. Wei Ziqin and the others also boarded their own sedans. Parting ways with Qiao Zhongbang and Qiao Senator, the lunch banquet for the families of the officials of the 5th rank and above was divided into male and female guest banquets. The male guests went to the Chun Palace. The female guests all went to the Queen's Central Palace to pay their New Year's greetings first, then eat dumplings together to fill their stomachs. The New Year's banquet would begin at noon. In the evening, the great king and queen invited officials of the 3rd rank and above and their families to a banquet for the 8 great aristocratic families in the capital. This was a great effort to save face for the 8 great clans. Martial arts were prevalent in Seikong Planet, and the status of the 8 great aristocratic families in the capital wasn't inferior to the 3 dukes and 6 marquises. The banquet in the evening was hosted by the great king and queen and held in the garden of Qingshui Fine Park. The banquet didn't discriminate between men and women. After all, those invited were aristocratic families who didn't care about trifles, so there was no need to talk about male and female distinctions. It was said that this Qingshui Fine Park was a newly built scenic spot in the palace. There were 3 other gardens in the entire garden, so it was naturally impossible to visit all of them in one night. And the banquet was mainly held in Qingshui Fine Park's southern courtyard. Chapter 839. I went to that Clearwater Fine Park, and it's really built well. The Crown Prince hugged his little wife and fed her as if no one else was around. He even said in a small voice, "If you like it, let's have Imperial Father give this park to you to play with." The great king, who was laughing and chatting with Su Pingyong and a few close officials in the king's palace, suddenly felt his nose itch, and he hurriedly suppressed his indecent sneeze. There's a hot spring in that park, and there's also a large pool that flows around half of the garden. The small pavilion is elegant, and the scenery is pleasant. At night, the luminous pearls set in the flower garden will all shine. It's so beautiful you'll definitely like it. Arbor rolled her eyes at him in annoyance. Why would I want to live in such a big park by myself? Prince Mo lowered his head and smiled foolishly at his wife, and couldn't help but kiss her. "Jojo, you're so nice. You're so virtuous." When Darling Xiao heard the word virtuous, she couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. A little demoness like her who killed people like scything flax, how could she be virtuous? She really didn't know how the Crown Prince's eyes grew. Oh right, Young he also invited the capital's recently famous Luo family troupe to sing an opera. As the Crown Prince spoke, he scooped another spoonful of osmanthus soup for the little fellow, and let her swallow it without any explanation. In the past, the royal troupe was invited to sing every year, but they couldn't come up with anything new. Young he suggested letting the Luo family troupe sing, and it seems to be quite popular with the madams and misses. Do you like it? He scooped another spoonful for her. Arbor angrily reached out to stop his fingers. I can't eat any more. What if you lose weight if you eat so little? Take the last bite. The Crown Prince blinked. He just liked to feed her. As he spoke, he even reached out to touch her soft little body. Looks so thin. Arbor had no choice but to finish the last bite before reaching out to push him. Go away, the little monk is here. The little monk is busy chanting scriptures. The little monk sits by their feet. After finishing his vegetarian meal, he closes his eyes and starts reciting scriptures. He doesn't disturb Emolien's Arbor. Arbor couldn't help but find it funny. Casting a glance at him, he asked, "Hasn't Lady Zheng been stripped of her responsibility to manage the 3 palaces and 6 halls? Why are you interfering with the New Year's banquet? Moreover, wasn't she pregnant? Why was she still worrying?" Who knows? Emolien snorted and lowered his head to look at his little wife. Could it be that you think that she has an ulterior motive for inviting the Luo family troupe into the palace? Arbor was just about to speak when he took out a communication jade charm from his inner world. He touched it with his finger and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The night pavilion has sent word. Within half a month of Wu Xiaosu's imprisonment, Shi Guangjin had visited her 3 times. If you want to know the specifics, you'll have to investigate further. Arbor put away the communication jade charm. I couldn't tell that Shi Guangjin was such an affectionate person. There's no need to investigate further. She only needed to know who was adding fuel to the fire. Arbor's tone was somewhat mocking. Molien frowned. Are we going to deal with that Wu Xiaosu? There's no need for that. Arbor shook his head. She's someone who can't walk out of prison. There's no need to go through the trouble. Did Wu Xiaosu think that the golden cicada she fed her was still the original poison? She had already modified it. If she could walk out of prison in 3 months, then she could only blame Arbor's lack of skill. As they spoke, the carriage arrived outside the central palace. Chapter 840. Jojo, I can only see you at night. Emolien didn't let go of his little lady. Be careful. If you encounter any trouble, immediately send me a message. I know. When he recalled Younghee's actions, he didn't know what she was up to, so he could only deal with whatever came his way. Wei Ziqin and her second daughter also alighted from the sedan and walked over to bid farewell to the Crown Prince. Hence, Crown Prince Mo gloomily watched as his wife walked into the central palace and left with the little monk. At this time, many upper-class madams and young misses had already gathered inside the Queen's brilliant Sun Hall. The Qiao family trio had arrived relatively late and was delayed at Huabei Gate. Thus, as soon as they entered, they received many sparkling gazes. It was one thing to see the Qiao family trio at the small banquet before the new year, since they had already witnessed the crown princess's prowess. But most people hadn't seen her before, especially the family members of those 4th and 5th rank officials. Right now, they were all curiously sizing up this little lady who suddenly ascended to the heavens in a single bound and became the crown princess. She really looked quite young. They wondered if she had reached marriageable age yet. 100 or so small tables had been set up on both sides of the hall. There was a spacious passageway in the middle, and at the end of a dozen or so steps, Queen Zhao sat loftily with pursed lips, looking down at everyone inside Brilliant Sun Hall. In the morning, she had received news that Her Majesty the Queen Dowager had sent someone to deliver that she had encountered you at Ziyu Mountain Villa, so she had left this naughty little grandson to celebrate the new year with her in the mountain villa. When she thought of how disobedient her youngest son was, the queen felt very uncomfortable. Now that she looked at this stoic-faced eldest daughter-in-law, she was even angrier. The mother and daughters of the Qiao family stepped forward and respectfully paid their respects to the queen. In terms of etiquette, no one could find any fault. But the queen felt stifled. Look at the Shu family's 4th Miss, Shu Hui. She was so considerate and proper. Not only did she personally present a painting, but she also came early in the morning with Madame Shu to pay her respects. This was what a daughter-in-law should do. Look at the little stoic's languid appearance. What time was it already? He had just arrived at the Brilliant Sun Hall. The first thing the concubines asked when they came in to wish her a happy new year was, "Where is the crown princess?" When she saw the little stoic for the first time, she couldn't suppress the discomfort in her heart and wanted to ruthlessly explode. However, noble Consort Jing cut her off with a chuckle. "Crown Prince Consort, you really didn't come early. Her Majesty the Queen has been waiting for you since early in the morning. I didn't think that she would wait until now. Have you repaired your sleeping quarters in Sephora Flower Palace?" Arbor coldly shifted his gaze and stared at Consort Jing. Consort Jing was so shocked that she felt a chill run down her spine. Her fingers on the armrest twitched involuntarily. Damn it! She was so frightened by this girl that her body trembled a little. Consort Jing was furious. The noblewomen below were also whispering to each other, talking about how Consort Jing's bedchamber had been smashed a while ago. Wasn't it precisely the crown princess who did it? Now that the crown princess was greeting Consort Jing to her face, her tone was rather sarcastic. It was obvious that she didn't care about the noble consort at all. Noble Consort Jing's face trembled slightly, and she forcefully suppressed the anger in her heart. She forced a smile at Xiao Mu with great difficulty before forcing out a sentence from between her teeth. The Crown Prince Consort really knows how to crack jokes. You know very well whether I'm joking or not. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.